Chapter 474. Taoist Xian Xiang's expression was somewhat conflicted. He knew that there would be resistance when he followed Taoist Xian Shu to capture Yin Xianchu, but he didn't expect that there would be so many obstacles and hostility from his fellow sect members. Taoist Xian Xiang faintly regretted and even felt wronged. He didn't want to be isolated in the sect because of this matter. On the other hand, Tao Master Xian Shu was still as indifferent as ever. The cultivators from the various sects who came with them remained silent. In fact, they were all waiting to see Tao Master Xian Shu and his disciple make a fool out of themselves. Not only that, they were more willing to see the internal strife that might be triggered because of Yin Xianchu. Of course, only Xian Ling's sect would act like Su Weihong did. On the surface of the sea, Lu Ping, Yin Xianchu, and the others were flying towards Huanyu Island at lightning speed. Ji Xianxian saw that the atmosphere was somewhat heavy and couldn't help but ask, "I'm afraid Taoist Xian Shu and the others have already arrived at Huangli Island. I hope they won't guess that we're going back to Huanyu Island." Shi Lingling thought for a moment and said, "I'm afraid it'll be difficult. There aren't many places that junior martial brother Yin can hide in. Taoist Xian Shu is also an exceptionally shrewd person. As long as he calms himself down, he will most likely be able to guess where we're going." Lu Ping touched the house of gold hanging on his chest and said, "I never intended to hide from them. Now, I can only hope that senior martial sister who can delay Taoist Xian Shu and the others on Huangli Island for a longer time." When Taoist Xian Shu and the others arrived at Huangli Island, only Hu Lili, Zhang Xuancheng, and Taoist Xian Su were left to greet them. As for Yao Yong and Zheng Jie, they didn't come out to greet them due to their injuries. Taoist Xian Shu's group of 18 people, other than Taoist Xian Shu who was a late-core forging cultivator, the other 17 were all mid-core forging cultivators from various sects and clans. At this time, Huangli Island had just gone through a full-scale attack by the demon race. Although the island's protective array had been restored, the island still looked desolate and bleak. Su Weihong chuckled and said, "I've heard that water sword deity Lu Xianping runs Huangli Island very well, as if it's a treasure bowl for Zhenling's sect. But now that I've seen it, it's nothing much." No one said anything. When Yuan Zhan arrived at Huangli Island, it was as if he saw Lu Ping everywhere. The hatred in his heart grew stronger and stronger. Without thinking, he said, "That's true. This Huangli Island has been run so badly by Lu Xianping, it's really disappointing." After Yuan Zhan finished speaking, he suddenly realized that Su Weihong had a sneer on his face. Hu Lili sneered at Yuan Zhan and didn't say anything. Taoist Xian Su and Zhang Xuancheng looked at Yuan Zhan with surprise and doubt in their eyes. Taoist Xian Xiang frowned and cautiously reminded Yuan Zhan, "Junior martial brother Yuan, please be careful with your words. The martial uncles on Huangli Island had just repelled the demon race's attack. The main culprit that caused the demon race to attack Huangli Island was Xian Ling's sect." Yuan Zhan smiled awkwardly and said bitterly, "Senior martial brother Xian Xiang, junior martial brother is just, Yuan Zhan said, but for a long time but still couldn't come up with a reason. Spiritual Master Xian Shu ignored Yuan Zhan. Seeing that there were only 3 people here, he glanced expressionlessly at Zhang Xuancheng, turned his head and nodded at Spiritual Master Xian Su, then asked Hu Lili, "Is Yin Xianchu on the island?" Taoist Xian Shu's stare made Zhang Xuancheng's hair stand on end and cold sweat appeared on his back. Hu Lili stepped forward and bowed, reporting to Martial Uncle Xian Shu, "Junior martial brother Yin is not on the island." At this time, Xian Ling's sect Su Weihong said in a strange tone, "I'm afraid you all still don't know, that Yin Xianchu is a bastard from the union of a human and a demon. The junior martial brother Yin you all speak of is an existence that everyone in the cultivation world wants to beat up. This time, your Taoist Xian Shu is here to clean up the sect. If you continue to protect him, do you still see Taoist Xian Shu as your senior?" Hu Lili sneered and turned to Su Weihong, "Who are you? What qualifications do you have to speak here?" Su Weihong was provoked by Hu Lili's disdainful gaze and disdainful sneer. He shouted, "Presumptuous, I am Xianling's sects," Hu Lili rudely interrupted Taoist Su Weihong, who was about to act tough, and said indifferently, "Xianling sect? So you're not Jinling's disciple?" "My Jinling sect is here to discuss the sect's internal affairs. Since when do we need disciples from other sects to make jokes? Can martial Uncle Xian Shu please teach me?" Su Weihong was furious. He looked at Hu Lili with a cold glint in his eyes, but then he looked at Reverend Xian Shu. He smiled coldly, waiting to see how Reverend Xian Shu would respond. He thought that he had succeeded in sowing discord, so he endured the ridicule of being looked down upon and watched the situation develop further. Taoist Xian Shu looked at Hu Lili with narrowed eyes, while Taoist Xian Su smiled bitterly. This time, a gloating look appeared in Yuan Zhan's eyes. Unexpectedly, Taoist Xian Shu nodded and said, "You're right. We are discussing our sect's internal affairs. Disciples from other sects are indeed not allowed to participate." This was out of Su Weihong and Yuan Zhan's expectation. Su Weihong said coldly, "Taoist Xian Shu, we are here under the orders of our sect's Laozus. Your sect's words, are you not putting the other sect's Laozus in your eyes?" Taoist Xian Shu replied bluntly, "Your sect's Laozus only asked you to come here as witnesses. When did he ask you to interfere in our sect's internal affairs? This Taoist doesn't know about this. When we return, I will definitely talk to my sect's Laozus and let my sect's Laozus communicate with your sect's Laozus. I believe that the other sect's Laozus are all righteous people. This order to interfere in my Jinling's matters must be someone deliberately distorting Fa Xiang Laozu's decree." Su Weihong's face turned pale, and a look of resentment appeared on his face. If Jinling's sect really held on to this point and refused to let go, he might end up like Yin Xianchu, becoming a sacrificial lamb for the sect. Yuan Zhan seemed to have found another opportunity and said, "Junior sister, since you said that Yin Xianchu is no longer on Huangli Island, can you allow us to search the island?" Hu Lili stretched out a finger and said, "First, you are a true spirit side courtyard disciple in the same batch as Lu Xianping, so please call me senior sister Hu, not junior sister. Second, who do you want to search?" Yuan Zhan stretched out his hand and drew a big circle. Then he thought of something and his fingers shrank in the air, pointing at Xuanxiang and himself. He said with a dry smile, "Of course, yes, of course it's only me and senior brother Xuanxiang." Hu Lili sneered and said, "You don't have the qualifications to give such an order. Taoist Master Lu Xianping is Jinling's alchemy grandmaster, a core member who participates in the major decisions of the sect. His position in the sect is not lower than martial Uncle Xuanchu's. If you want to search Huangli Island, you must have our sect's Laozu or Taoist Gua Xuanshan's orders." Taoist Master Xianshu naturally came with Jinling Laozu's orders, but Hu Lili's words exploded in Yuan Zhan's ears. He looked back at Taoist Master Xianshu in disbelief, only to hear Taoist Master Xianshu say in a deep voice, "This Taoist Master indeed has our sect's Dharma idol Laozu's order to capture Yin Xianchu. Even if martial nephew Lu is here, he will not stop us." Yuan Zhan's ears were buzzing. He didn't expect Lu Ping to be standing so high up, to the point that he had to look up to him. For a moment, he was a little dazed. Hu Lili nodded with a straight face. Taoist Master Xianshu took the lead and walked into the island. Xian Xiang and Yuan Zhan, whose footsteps were a little heavy, chose to go in another direction. The other sect's cultivators were also about to search Huangli Island, but Taoist Master Xianshu suddenly appeared in front of them. He said coldly, "You don't have the qualifications to search my Jinling's island. Please follow behind senior brother Xianshu as a witness." This time, the other sect's Taoist masters didn't have any objections. Jinling was very accurate and it came to matters of right and wrong. He didn't give the other sect's Taoist masters any chance to take advantage of him. Other than Xianling's sect, no one was willing to risk offending Jinling to raise any objections. Most of the people chose to follow behind Taoist Master Xianshu. There were also a few who leisurely followed behind Yuan Zhan and Xian Xiang. Su Weihong didn't even think about it and chased after Yuan Zhan. Hu Lili gave Zhang Xuanqing a look. Zhang Xuanqing understood and hurriedly followed behind Yuan Zhan and the others. Hu Lili then turned around and said, I'll have to trouble Martial Uncle for today's matter. Please follow behind Senior Brother Xuanxiang and the others. Taoist Master Xian Shu smiled and said, It's fine. Anyway, I also feel that today's matter is very inappropriate. I'll just follow them for a tour of Huangli Island. Then, he walked away. Hu Lili stood on the spot and let out a long sigh. Then, she chased after Taoist Master Xian Shu. Hu Lili walked in front of Taoist Master Xian Shu. Taoist Master Xian Shu looked at Hu Lili and asked, Martial niece Hu, how long have they been gone? Hu Lili already knew, but her expression didn't change. She said, Martial Uncle, if you think they have already left, why are you still searching Huangli Island? Taoist Master Xian Shu chuckled and didn't say anything. Everyone walked all the way to the center of Huangli Island. There were more and more cultivators here. Although the cultivators on Huangli Island were surprised to see so many core forging cultivators, they didn't show much surprise. Instead, when they saw Hu Lili among them, they enthusiastically greeted her. Taoist Hu, Taoist Hu. They kept calling out to her. I can see that you are very respected on Huangli Island. You are also very popular. Taoist Master Xian Shu casually chatted with Hu Lili. Hu Lili didn't know what Taoist Master Xian Shu meant, but she vaguely understood that Taoist Master Xian Shu didn't want to capture Yin Xian Chu. But she heard from Lu Ping that Taoist Master Xian Shu had schemed against Huangli Island, so Hu Lili was still very careful. Taoist Master Xian Shu saw that Hu Lili's eyes were still filled with vigilance, so he didn't say anything. At this moment, a sound-transmitting magic sword suddenly flew across the sky and fell into Hu Lili's hand. Hu Lili swept it with her divine sense and suddenly her face was filled with anger. Chapter 475. Upon seeing this, Sage Xian Shu's divine sense moved. He seemed to have sensed what had happened, so he smiled and said, Let's go and take a look. Hu Lili thanked Sage Xian Shu solemnly, turned around, and hurried in the direction of Lu Ping's cave abode. Sage Xian Shu followed behind Hu Lili unhurriedly. Hu Lili walked to the front of Lu Ping's cave dwelling and saw that the protective array formation around the cave dwelling had crumbled. Not only that, it seemed like the protective array formation was broken through by brute force. Her face immediately turned cold. Enlightened Master Xian Shu followed closely behind and frowned at the sight. As soon as Hu Lili entered the cave abode, she heard Yuan Zhan's voice, Junior Brother Zhang, you are not my match. It's better for you to move aside. If I don't go in and take a look, how can I be sure that the monster Yin Xian Chu is not inside? With you blocking me like this, could it be that Yin Xian Chu is really in Junior Brother Lu's cave abode? Senior Brother Yuan, if you go any further, it will be Senior Brother Lu Ping's cultivation room. Without Senior Brother Lu's consent, you used brute force to break the array of Senior Brother Lu's cave abode and barge in. This is a taboo in the cultivation world. Now, you want to barge into his cultivation room, and you even brought an outsider with you. Aren't you afraid of Senior Brother Lu's reprimand? Hu Lili passed through the cave abode's corridor and came to the hall. She saw Zhang Xuanqing standing in front of Lu Ping's cultivation room, while Yuan Zhan, Su Weihong, and a soaring feather sect disciple were standing together, confronting Zhang Xuanqing. Su Weihong originally wanted to berate Zhang Xuanqing, but when he saw Hu Lili enter, he shut his mouth and waited to watch the show. Hu Lili's expression was unfriendly, and she said to Yuan Zhan as soon as she entered, Senior Brother Yuan, you are standing in the wrong position. I thought you should be standing by Junior Brother Zhang's side to block the outsiders. Hu Lili didn't have a good impression of Yuan Zhan, Su Weihong, and the others. With just a single sentence, Yuan Zhan's face turned red with sarcasm. Su Weihong was also a little embarrassed. He immediately retorted, the situation is very clear now. We were ordered by our respective sects Laozu to accompany your esteemed sect to clean up your sect, and to act as witnesses. In reality, your esteemed sect is making all sorts of excuses. We will naturally report what we saw and heard to our own sects Laozu. When Yuan Zhan saw Hu Lili enter, his arrogance from before was greatly restrained, but he still braced himself and said, Senior Sister Hu, since we're searching, why don't we search carefully? Could it be that junior brother Lu is really harboring that Yin Xianchu? Hu Lili looked at Yuan Zhan seriously and asked, Are you sure you want to barge into junior brother Lu's cultivation room? Yuan Zhan's expression fluctuated while Su Weiheng chuckled coldly behind him. Yuan Zhan seemed to have made up his mind and said, Since it's to clean up the sect, Yin Xianchu naturally can't be allowed to live. We must capture him even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground. Hu Lili sneered and said to Zhang Xuancheng beside her, Junior brother Zhang, move aside. Let him search. Zhang Xuancheng was still a little hesitant. He glanced at Hu Lili as if to confirm what she had just said, only to see Hu Lili nod. Zhang Xuancheng then glared fiercely at Yuan Zhan and moved to the side. Seeing Hu Lili openly move aside the door to Lu Ping's cultivation room, Yuan Zhan had an inexplicable bad premonition in his heart. However, the arrow was already knocked on the bow and he had no choice but to enter. Yuan Zhan walked towards the door of the cultivation room when Hu Lili suddenly said, Junior brother Yuan, I hope that you only entered this cultivation room to find junior brother Yin Xianchu and not have any other motives. Yuan Zhan's footsteps paused, and his expression changed indeterminately. However, he still walked towards the cultivation room in the end, and Su Weiheng chuckled as he followed. Zhang Xuancheng intended to go forward and stop him, but Su Weiheng seemed to have sensed it and said, We're witnesses. If Yin Xianchu is really in the cultivation room, then we can be witnesses. Hu Lili grabbed Zhang Xuancheng, who was about to step forward, and shook her head at him. Yuan Zhan walked to the door of Lu Ping's cultivation room. He saw that the entire door of the cultivation room was covered by a thick layer of restriction light screen. Yuan Zhan looked at these complicated restrictions with surprise and a trace of anticipation. Naturally, he was surprised by this layer of restriction light screen. It was obvious that only those who had a certain level of proficiency in restriction techniques could set up this layer of restriction light screen. In his heart, his fear of Lu Ping deepened. Naturally, he was looking forward to what Hu Lili had warned him before. He naturally did not come in purely for the ridiculous reason of searching for Yin Xianchu. In fact, even he did not believe that Yin Xianchu would hide here and not escape as soon as possible. Seeing that Hu Lili was indifferent, Yuan Zhan could only look to Su Weiheng for help. However, Su Weiheng seemed to be playing dumb and asked, Junior brother Yuan, is there anything I can do for you? Hu Lili sneered at the side while Zhang Xuancheng had a look of disdain. Yuan Zhan's expression changed. He stared at Su Weiheng's smiling face and said word by word, I wonder if senior brother Su still has a restriction-breaking talisman on you. Su Weiheng seemed as if he was suddenly enlightened, and he took out a talisman that flickered with golden light from within his sleeve. He said, So junior brother Yuan wants this thing. Since little brother has it here, how could I be stingy? He handed the restriction-breaking talisman to Yuan Zhan. Zhang Xuancheng whispered to Hu Lili, just now, the array outside the cave mansion was also broken by 2 formation-breaking talismans. Hu Lili nodded. She was an expert in array formations. Although she wasn't an expert in charms, she was still more knowledgeable than the others when it came to breaking array formations. Although Lu Ping's cave dwelling's defensive array formation wasn't of the best quality, Hu Lili had already guessed that Yuan Zhan and the others were able to break through the cave dwelling's defensive array formation without alerting the people on the island. However, she didn't expect Yuan Zhan to use Xian Ling's sect's array-breaking charms. In other words, Xian Ling's sect was well prepared for this. What was Xian Ling's sect trying to do? Naturally, Hu Lili did not think that Xian Ling's sect was just trying to sow discord between Jinling's disciples. Xian Ling's sect did not need to pay such a huge price for just one Yuan Zhan. Although Lu Ping was qualified, how could Yuan Zhan be worthy of being Lu Ping's opponent? While Hu Lili was still thinking, Yuan Zhan had already received Su Weihong's restriction-breaking talisman and placed it on the cultivation room's door. Layers of light flickered on the door, then disappeared bit by bit. The thick layer of restriction was getting thinner and thinner. However, when the restriction-breaking talisman burned out, there was only a thin layer of restriction left. Yuan Zhan's expression changed while Su Weihong sucked in a breath of cold air. He thought to himself, what a profound restriction. Then, Su Weihong looked at Yuan Zhan in front of him with an amused expression, waiting for him to speak again. At this point, there was no reason for Yuan Zhan to back down. Lu Xianping also would not bury the hatchet with Yuan Zhan just because Yuan Zhan had only used one restriction-breaking talisman but failed to break the cultivation room's restriction. However, it was not easy to make a restriction-breaking talisman and restriction-breaking talisman. Including the two restriction-breaking talismans at the cave entrance, even Su Weihong felt his heart ache. When Hu Lili saw Yuan Zhan take another restriction-breaking talisman from Su Weihong's hand, her eyes seemed to be deep in thought. A moment later, Hu Lili seemed to have thought of something. She looked left and right but found nothing. Where did spiritual master Xian Shu go? At this moment, Lu Ping, who was already flying towards Universe Island with Yin Xianchu, changed his expression the instant the cultivation room's restriction was broken. He immediately recovered. When Ji Xianxian saw this, he couldn't help but ask, "Senior brother Lu, is something wrong?" Lu Ping's speed didn't change as he said, "It's nothing. The people who captured junior brother Yin have already arrived at Huangli Island. It looks like senior sister who won't be able to hold on for much longer. With martial uncle Xian Shu's abilities, I think they'll soon discover where we're going. We need to speed up." Unfortunately, after the battle on Huangli Island, everyone was more or less injured. Immediately after, they went out to sea to escort Yin Xianchu. Even though they had the support of Lu Ping's superior recovery pills, which allowed them to temporarily recover from their injuries, the true essence in their bodies couldn't support them for a long period of time. Shi Lingling said, "We can't go on like this. I'm afraid that when the pursuers catch up, only junior brother Lu and you three will be able to put up a fight." Lu Ping thought for a moment, then said, "This is my negligence. Since it's like this, then we'll split into 3 groups. Senior sister Shi, senior sister Ma Yu, senior brother Zhong Jian, the 3 of you will form a group and recover your true essence. If the pursuers behind us come, the 3 of you will just have to think of a way to obstruct them. You must not fight them to the death." Lu Ping thought for a moment, then said, "I'll leave the Azure Phoenix here as a helper. If things don't go well, you can just run. I think that as long as the 3 of you reveal your identities as disciples of the sect, martial uncle Xian Shu won't make things difficult for you. However, when you return to the sect, a punishment is unavoidable." Zhong Jian smiled and said, "That's nothing. Since we came out today, we've already been on the sect's punishment list. The sect has to give the other sects an impression. However, our sect has always been protective of our own. The matter with junior brother Yin was already forced by our sect, so there's no reason for us to make an example out of it. In the end, it's all bark and no bite." Lu Qiner transformed into a phoenix and descended onto a deserted island with the 3 of them. The 3 of them and the phoenix quickly recovered their true essence while quietly waiting for the pursuers behind them to arrive. After flying for a period of time, Chen Lian and the others also couldn't take it anymore. Lu Ping had Chen Lian, Du Feng, and spiritual master Xian Tao hide on a reef and left behind pills to recover true essence. Then, he continued flying towards vast Universe Island with Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian. Ji Xianxian said hesitantly, "Senior brother Lu, are we really going to force our way into vast Universe Island? With just the 3 of us?" Lu Ping said in a deep voice, "It's just a pretense. Actually, everyone has already thought of it. It's just that out of trust in me, no one exposed it. Currently, even though our sects Tian Shui Laozu and Xian Ling sects Dao Yen Laozu aren't on Vast Universe Island, it's not like the other sects don't have Laozu overseeing them. How can the three of us charge in? Our target is a secret location in the outer seas of Vast Universe Island. You'll know once we get there. The restriction on Huangli Island's cultivation room was finally broken. A dense spiritual qi was like a mountain torrent that had been accumulating for a long time. In the instant the restriction was broken, it surged out from the cultivation room. Not only Yuan Zhan, Su Weihong, and the Soaring Feather Sect's disciple, even Zhang Xuancheng, who was standing beside Hu Lili, revealed an astonished expression. This level of density of spiritual qi could only be achieved by at least half a mid-tier spiritual vein. Yuan Zhan revealed an expression of anticipation as he impatiently walked towards the cultivation room. Chapter 476. There's someone in the cultivation room. Both Yuan Zhan and Su Weihong exclaimed in their hearts. However, Yuan Zhan was pleasantly surprised that he had finally caught hold of Lu Ping's weakness. Who else could be hiding in the thick restriction at this time other than Yin Xianchu? He was almost fooled by Lu Xuanping's trick. Fortunately, he withstood the pressure and persisted in breaking into the cultivation room. Su Weihong was surprised. He didn't believe that Yin Xianchu could be caught so easily. Moreover, it was in Lu Xuanping's own cultivation room. If someone took the opportunity to make things difficult for Lu Xianping, wouldn't Zhenling have to punish his own family in the name of righteousness again? Yuan Zhan charged into the cultivation room, but he quickly retreated at a speed faster than when he entered. A golden halberd rushed out of the cultivation room with a fiery red explosion. Yuan Zhan's expression changed greatly. He took out a white jade shield and shouted, "Brother Su, help me." Su Weihong's expression was solemn. With a shake of his hand, a rainbow shot out. Unexpectedly, the halberd that shot out of the cultivation room seemed to be a bluff. With a fierce momentum, it made contact with the white jade shield and retreated on its own before Su Weihong's rainbow could reach it. An angry roar came from the cultivation room. Who the fuck dares to trespass into someone else's cave abode? Scram! Senior brother Yao Yong. Why are you here? Yuan Zhan was still in shock. He finally put away the white jade shield in his hand and asked in surprise. He moved his feet and wanted to continue walking in. The golden halberd rushed out again and pointed at Yuan Zhan, who was about to enter the cave abode. Yuan Zhan had no choice but to stop. Su Weihong's eyes narrowed. He stood behind Yuan Zhan without making a sound, but there was a flash of light in his eyes. He inadvertently looked into the cultivation room. Clearly, it was a kind of ability that cultivated the eyes. He felt that Yao Yong's golden halberd seemed powerful, but it was indeed strong in appearance. In addition, the halberd had retreated midway, which made it even more strange. Beside him, Hu Lili's eyes were also flickering with green light. She could see the divine light in Su Weihong's eyes. Yuan Zhan, what are you trying to do? I was severely injured in the battle with the demon clan, and it wasn't easy for me to beg junior brother Lu to seal the spiritual vein in his cultivation room to recuperate. Now, you've broken the seal of the cultivation room, almost causing me to suffer from qi deviation and my cultivation to be destroyed. Yuan Zhan, what are your intentions? Are you trying to kill me? Do you really think that I, Yao Yong, am a tiger that has fallen to the ground? I might have to ask my teacher, perfected Chu Xuancheng, to judge the situation. Also, who is that person behind you? How come we haven't seen him in our sect? Could it be that you, Yuan Zhan, have received orders from some sect to murder me? Are you even a disciple of Zhenling? Yao Yong's series of reprimands and questions, coupled with the fact that he had colluded and schemed with Yao Yong, immediately made Yuan Zhan, who was already somewhat guilty, break out in cold sweat. For a moment, he stood at the door of the cultivation room, not knowing whether to retreat or enter. At this moment, perfected Xian Shu appeared in the cave dwelling. He glanced at the cultivation room and said, Yin Xianchu isn't here. All of you, leave. Yuan Zhan felt as if he had been granted amnesty and hurriedly left the cave dwelling. Su Weihong's face was full of resentment as he sighed inwardly at Yuan Zhan's incompetence. He also left. Hu Lili gave a few instructions to Yao Yong, who was in the cultivation room, before closing the stone door. The seal that had been broken by Su Weihong's restriction-breaking talisman began to slowly recover. When Hu Lili walked out of the cave dwelling, she discovered that Perfected Xian Shu had already summoned Perfected Xian Xiang and the others. Seeing Hu Lili walk out of the cave dwelling, Perfected Xian Shu said indifferently, "It seems that Yin Xianchu is definitely not on Huangli Island. The Northern Sea is already an inescapable trap for him. Unless he hides somewhere and doesn't show himself, he can only leave the Northern Sea." "Martial niece Hu, is what the old man said right?" Hu Lili smiled calmly and said, "This is only Martial Uncle's guess. It is not convenient for me to comment." "Alright, then we will make a trip to Huanyu Island." Perfected Xian Shu led the way out of Huangli Island. Yuan Zhan and the others had already figured something out. Their expressions changed as they followed Perfected Xian Shu out of the island. Hu Lili's expression changed and she suddenly said, "Martial Uncle, please wait." Perfected Xian Shu turned his head and smiled, "What? Is there any other way to stall for time?" Hu Lili said sternly, reporting to Martial Uncle, "Although the protective formation and the seal in the cultivation room aren't anything brilliant, it is the result of Junior Lu Xuanping's and my efforts. However, it was so easily destroyed by Junior Lu Xianping. If Martial Uncle leaves without a care, it is inevitable that we will be dissatisfied." Without waiting for Perfected Xian Shu to speak, Yuan Zhan flew into a rage out of humiliation and said, "Senior Martial Sister Hu, don't push your luck. We are searching for Yin Xianchu under the orders of our sex Laozu. Are you questioning our sex Laozu?" Hu Lili completely disregarded the threatening Yuan Zhan in front of her. She only looked at the expressionless Perfected Xian Shu with a faint smile. Perfected Xian Shu suddenly smiled and said, "Martial niece Hu, do you have any rules?" Yuan Zhan seemed to be choked to death. His face flushed red as he looked at his uncle in front of him. Hu Lili smiled sweetly and pointed at Perfected Xian Xiang. "Huangli Island has just been attacked by the demon race. Currently, only Martial Uncle Xian Shu, Junior Zhang Xuancheng and Martial Uncle Xian Su are on the island. The others are not on the island. Junior Yao Yong and Junior Sister Zheng Jia are both seriously injured and won't be able to recover in a short period of time. Therefore, the island's defense is weak. Martial niece would like to ask Martial Uncle to let senior brother Xian Xiang stay on Huangli Island for the time being to help Martial niece and the others protect Huangli Island. When junior brother Lu and the others return, it won't be too late for senior brother Xian Xiang to leave." Perfected Xian Shu chuckled and said, "You're really wishful thinking. Do you think that without Xian Xiang, Yin Xuanchu's strength will be weakened and he will be able to escape?" Hu Lili giggled and said, "Martial Uncle is right. It is precisely because Junior believes that with Martial Uncle's help, Yin Xianchu will definitely be captured. Therefore, I shamelessly ask senior brother Xian Xiang to stay and help Martial niece and the others protect Huangli Island for a period of time to avoid being taken advantage of by others. Senior brother Xian Xiang is one of the strongest third-generation disciples in our sect. He is only one step away from breaking through to the late core forging stage. With senior brother Xian Xiang here, Huangli Island will certainly be impregnable." After Hu Lili finished speaking, she glanced at Su Weihong out of the corner of her eyes. Perfected Xian Shu naturally noticed Hu Lili's actions. After muttering to himself for a moment, he turned to Perfected Xian Xiang, who had a somewhat complicated expression on his face, and said, "Fine, you don't have to participate in this pursuit. The safety of Huangli Island is much more important to our sect than a mixed human and demon Yin Xianchu." After Perfected Xian Xiang began to capture Yin Xianchu, he had been obstructed by the disciples of his sect, both openly and covertly. In addition, he himself was an outstanding cultivator that Jinling had nurtured since childhood, so he had long been unwilling to participate in this operation. However, this matter was handled by perfected Xian Shu. As his disciple, perfected Xian Xiang was naturally duty-bound to assist his teacher. Perfected Xian Xiang had followed perfected Xian Shu for several decades. How could perfected Xian Shu not understand his disciple's thoughts? Thus, after hearing Hu Lily's explanation, he took the opportunity to have perfected Xian Xiang stay on Huangli Island. After leaving Huangli Island, perfected Su Weihong had a gloomy expression on his face as he asked perfected Xian Shu, Senior Xian Shu, what should we do now? Why do we need to go to Huanyu Island? Perfected Xian Shu leisurely said, if Yin Xianchu wants to leave the North Sea, he can only go to the East Sea. Now that he has been expelled from our sect's teleportation formation that leads to the East Sea will naturally not be open to him. Similarly, the teleportation formation that leads to the East Sea from the various sects in the North Sea will naturally not be open to outsiders. Thus, the only teleportation formation that can be used is Huanyu Island. On the surface of the sea, perfected Xian Shu and the others were flying in the direction of Huanyu Island. However, at this moment, perfected Xian Shu's divine sense moved, as if he had discovered something. However, he frowned, as if his divine sense was being interfered with and could not see clearly. Just at this moment, a vast wave of spiritual qi spread over. Within the wave, there was a special kind of wave. Perfected Xian Shu's expression turned grave as he said, demon race? The expressions of the various sects cultivators that followed perfected Xian Shu changed. They saw that in the center of the spiritual qi wave high up in the sky, a huge boulder the size of a small mountain suddenly appeared in the sky, charging towards perfected Xian Shu and the others. When the huge boulder streaked across the sky, it brought with it a huge spark. In an instant, it split into countless fiery meteorites, enveloping perfected Xian Shu and the others within the range of the countless falling meteorites. Talisman weapon. Meteorite descent. Perfected Xian Shu exclaimed, as if he had thought of something. Perfected Xian Shu didn't have time to say anything. He opened up a huge jade umbrella and held it up, protecting the people around him. Before the falling meteorites could hit the jade umbrella, they were slowed down by a layer of light attached to the surface of the umbrella and bounced off. However, perfected Xian Shu's jade umbrella could only protect the people around him. The cultivators from the other sects were not so lucky. Several people were injured when they tried to block the falling meteorites, or were directly smashed into the sea by the huge impact of the falling meteorites. Fortunately, these cultivators only spat out a few mouthfuls of blood, and their lives were not harmed. The talisman weapon was made by Fa Xiang Laozu. Just like the talisman treasures made by perfected core forging Taoists were a huge threat to blood condensation realm cultivators, the talisman weapon made by Fa Xiang Laozu was also a tyrannical deterrent to core forging realm cultivators. A crisp and proud chirp came from the sky. A huge luan appeared in the distant sky. When it spread its wings, which were about 6 feet long, it flapped and was covered by a layer of green and red light. Immediately after, the luan quickly flew into the distance. Bastard! So it's just an early-stage core forging realm bird demon. He dares to enter the inner sea just because he has a talisman weapon. He's simply courting death. Fortunately, he's just an early-stage core forging realm demonic cultivator. It's difficult for him to unleash the full power of the talisman weapon. Otherwise, a few people would have died this time. Kill this bird demon and take his talisman weapon. When the crowd saw that the one who sneak attacked them was actually an early-stage core forging realm demonic cultivator, 3 or 4 of the perfected masters who were panicking because of the talisman weapon immediately flew out and chased after the fleeing Yuan. Talisman weapon. It was a life-saving item for core forging realm cultivators. Chapter 477. Sage Xian Shu's group was getting closer and closer to the sea region around Earth Island. Earlier, due to the sneak attack from the Yao clan and the appearance of the talisman weapons, several cultivators from the same group had rushed over to kill off the Yao cultivators. However, Xian Shu Laozu did not stop to wait for them. Instead, he led the remaining 8 cultivators towards Earth Island. Seeing that they were about to enter the sea region around Earth Island, Sage Xianshu's divine sense fluctuated. Suddenly, he turned his head to look at the surface of the sea, which was several hundred zhang away. At the same time, he shouted, "Who? Come out!" As he spoke, he pointed at the surface of the sea, which was several hundred zhang away. As everyone was feeling surprised, they saw a huge wave rise up from the spot where Sage Xianshu's finger was pointing. It seemed as though something terrifying was about to emerge from the sea. Suddenly, 3 wretched-looking figures emerged from the sea. Glancing at Sage Xianshu's group, light flashed out from their bodies and they turned to flee in a direction where there was no one around. Just as the 3 of them left, a large clump of seaweed suddenly rose up from the sea. The clump of seaweed waved about in every direction, seemingly wanting to entangle something. As for the 3 figures, they had long since escaped from the area covered by the dancing seaweed. As the 3 figures turned to look at them, Sage Xianshu's group was able to clearly see their faces. It's Yin Xianchu, the one in black. That's right. The other one is Lu Xianping. Look at his flying technique. He has seemingly transformed into a stream of water. Lu Xuanping's master is Lu Tianling, Laozu. He learned a water-type magic technique. As for the one riding a flying puppet, he must be Ji Xianxian. That's right. It's them. What cunning youngsters. They hid here and made us think that they had gone to Earth Island. If not for Sage Xianshu, we would have been easily evaded by them. What are we waiting for? Chase them. Stop them and hand them over to Jinling's Sage Xianshu. Let them deal with them. Ha, ha. Seeing this, everyone became excited. With a shout, 8 mid-core forging cultivators from the various sects chased after the distressed trio. Although Yuan Zhan felt that it was inappropriate, in order to let Lu Ping experience the feeling of being chased, Yuan Zhan happily chased after them. Just as Su Weihong was about to chase after him, he saw Sage Xianshu frowning as though he was thinking about something. Su Weihong rolled his eyes and said, "What's wrong? Is Senior Xianshu going back on his word? These 3 from your esteemed sect are known as the strongest 3rd-generation disciples. If Senior Xianshu did not make a move, we might not be able to keep them here." Reverend Xianshu looked at Su Weihong with a strange expression and suddenly laughed. "Nephew Su is right, maybe the old man will also have to make a move, let's catch up." This time, it was Su Weihong's turn to be surprised. Although the 3 people in front of them were extremely fast, the sea was vast and there was nothing to hide them. Therefore, the 3 of them were unable to shake off the pursuit of the people behind them. Although Dao Master Xianshu only started to chase after the 3 of them, he was after all a peak core forging 8th layer cultivator. Very quickly, he caught up and closed the distance between him and the 3 of them. The closer Sage Xianshu got to the 3 fleeing people, the more he felt that something was wrong. Although the 3's speed was fast, their escape techniques were constantly supported by talismans and not their own escape techniques. Moreover, although the 3's aura fluctuated, making it difficult to grasp, but compared to Lu Xuanping's 5th layer core forging cultivator and Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian's 4th layer core forging cultivators, there was still a clear gap. Moreover, as the pursuit dragged on, the 3 fleeing people in front of them actually felt exhausted and their speed slowly decreased. The escape light under Sage Xianshu's feet suddenly burst out with light. His figure flashed several times in the sky and appeared in front of the 3 fleeing people. The 3 fleeing people were startled and wanted to change direction, but it was already too late. Su Weihong, Yuan Zhan and the others had already surrounded them from both sides. Seeing that they could no longer escape, the 3 simply stopped in front of Sage Xianshu. At this time, Su Weihong, Yuan Zhan and the others also felt that something was wrong. Yuan Zhan saw that although the 3 of them had the appearance of Lu Ping, Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian respectively, their height and build were wrong. Their aura was also completely different. Yuan Zhan's expression changed and he said sternly, "That's not right. Who are the three of you? Why are you pretending to be Lu Ping and the others? Among them, Lu Ping chuckled and said, Junior brother Yuan has good eyesight. You noticed it so easily. Sage Xian Shu smiled faintly and said, I don't know if you're a martial nephew of the refining hall or a martial nephew of the puppet pavilion. These three masks are made to perfection. If you conceal your aura more tightly, I'm afraid that even the old man wouldn't be able to distinguish you. The three of them wiped their faces and immediately revealed their true appearances. The one pretending to be Lu Ping was Chen Lian, while Sage Xian Tao was wearing Ji Xian's mask. As for Du Feng, who was not good with words like Yin Xian Chu, he was disguised as Lu Ping. Chen Lian smiled and said, Martial Uncle Xian Shu's discerning eyes are like torches. These masks are something that my master, Sage Enigma Flame, and the puppet, Grandmaster Xian Huai, worked together to refine. This disciple felt that it was a novelty, so he took a few from master to play around. Unexpectedly, Martial Uncle misunderstood. When Su Weihong saw the three of them changing their appearances in the blink of an eye, he recalled that when he urged Sage Xian Shu to chase after them, Sage Xian Shu's reaction showed that he had noticed something amiss. However, he still chased after them. Clearly, he was also pretending to not know how to protect his own sect's disciples. However, at that time, Su Weihong was the one who urged Sage Xian Shu to chase after them. Sage Xian Shu had used the excuse of not discovering that the three of them were pretending to be Lu Ping. Naturally, Su Weihong had no choice but to viciously say, these people are clearly not respecting your sect's Laozu's orders. Sage Xian Shu smiled gently and said, these disciples are indeed naughty and mischievous. Although they did it out of their desire to protect their fellow sect members, they still violated the sect's laws. I, Xinling, will naturally punish them. There's no need for martial nephew Su to worry about it. Su Weihong angrily remained silent. Sage Xian Shu's expression turned serious and he said, the three of you will return to Heaven's Spirit Mountain now and inform your respective masters of your mistakes. After that, you will become woodcutters at the back of Heaven's Spirit Mountain for 3 years. You will chop 3 loads of firewood every day. You are not allowed to use your true essence or magic power. During these 3 years, you will not be allowed to enjoy the sect's benefits as punishment. Do you accept this? Chen Lian and the other two looked at each other, then respectfully bowed to Sage Xian Shu and said, Martial Uncle, you enforce the law fairly. We accept this. Sage Xian Shu nodded and said, in that case, the three of you may return to Heaven's Spirit Mountain. After saying that, he turned to the other sect's disciples and said with a smile, my sect's disciples are unfilial and have made a fool of themselves in front of all of you. Now that the Sea of Universe Island is close at hand, I'm afraid that Yin Xianchu will arrive on Universe Island soon. In order to prevent Yin Xianchu from escaping to the Eastern Sea through the transportation formation, the old man will need to go first. All of you can catch up later. At this moment, Su Weihong took a step forward and said, Junior should go with Senior. Since I'm here to be a witness, I naturally need a legitimate reason. If there's another fake like this, I'll be able to give an explanation to the sect's elders. Sage Xian Shu looked displeased and said, if martial nephew Su can keep up with the old man, then the old man will naturally have nothing to say. After saying that, there was a flash of light under Sage Xian Shu's feet and he was already several hundred feet away. With another flash, he was already more than 1,000 feet away. Su Weihong smiled confidently and raised his hand to toss out a flying boat. Su Weihong leaped up and stood on the flying boat. His true essence surged all over his body and the flying boat immediately drew a huge white trench on the sea's surface. It instantly disappeared before everyone's eyes. As expected, its speed was not inferior to Sage Xian Shu's. The remaining Yuan Zhan and the disciples from the various sects looked at each other. After a while, they remembered their respective missions and helplessly chased in the direction of Huanyu Island. When everyone returned to the place where they had met the fake Lu Ping and the other two, they coincidentally met up with the few practitioners from the various sects who had chased after the core forging stage bird demon with the intention of stealing the seal weapon from the bird demon's hands. Only then did they realize that the bird demon was actually the demon pet of Jinling's disciple. Everyone realized that they had been tricked and originally wanted to teach the 3 early core forging stage disciples a lesson. However, unexpectedly, one of the female practitioners took out 4 seal weapons in a row and said that Jinling's Tiankong Laozu, who had just reached the mid-Dharma stage, was her grandfather. This scared the 4 mid-core forging stage adepts so badly that they wet their pants and could only turn around and chase in the direction of Sage Xian Shu and the others. The 2 parties met up and each recounted their encounters. They all hated Jinling's disciple to death, but in their hearts, they deeply suppressed their admiration for the camaraderie between Jinling's disciple. Thousands of miles away from Huanyu Island, the calm surface of the sea suddenly split open. 3 disheveled figures rushed out of the sea one after another and flew desperately in the direction of Huanyu Island. Immediately after the 3 of them, 8 or 9 mid-core forging stage beast cultivators jumped out of the water and chased after them. However, at this moment, a low roar suddenly came from the bottom of the sea. The 8 or 9 beast cultivators who were chasing after them suddenly stopped. Seeing the 3 of them fleeing in a disheveled manner, they all let out a long roar and turned around, leaping into the sea and disappearing. The 3 of them fled for a distance and only stopped when they saw that the beast cultivators behind them were no longer chasing after them. They were Lu Ping, Yin Xianchu, and Ji Xianxian. At this moment, the 3 of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Lu Ping's brows were tightly furrowed, while Ji Xianxian and Yin Xuanchu's faces were slightly pale, as if they had overexerted their true essence. Ji Xianxian even revealed a hint of helplessness, while Yin Xuanchu's hint of coldness actually carried a hint of determination. Motherfucker, man proposes, but God disposes. Lu Ping finally fiercely cursed, and said, there are actually so many core forging stage beast cultivators hiding here. We almost ran into them. Ji Xianxian received a water spirit pellet from Lu Ping. This was a true essence recovery medicinal pellet concocted using the water spirit alchemy technique. Although each pellet consumed a lot of true essence, its effects were 50% better than ordinary true essence recovery medicinal pellets. Ji Xianxian swallowed the water spirit pill, looked at his good friend who was in despair, and said worriedly, Senior Brother Lu, why are there so many beast cultivators there? It can't be that your secret teleportation formation was discovered by the beast cultivators, right? Chapter 478. Lu Ping shook his head with a serious expression and said, that shouldn't be the case. That teleportation array is extremely well hidden, and the entrance has already been destroyed by me. If they didn't intentionally search for it, they would absolutely not be able to discover its location. However, with so many demon race cultivators hiding here, they must be plotting something. Although we've discovered their tracks now, we can't go to that teleportation array. Damn it! Thinking up to here, Lu Ping couldn't help but curse again. Lu Ping originally wanted to send Yin Xianchu to the Middle Earth through that teleportation array, but he didn't expect that there were actually over 10 core forging stage demon cultivators hiding in the nearby sea. He didn't know what they were plotting, and one of them was an old acquaintance of Lu Ping. It was the late core forging stage primordial giant crocodile, Aoli, who had pursued Lu Ping in the deep sea demon region. It was precisely this powerful demon cultivator who discovered the whereabouts of Lu Ping's group of 3. With just a single strike, it allowed Lu Ping to once again witness the terror of a late core forging stage cultivator. It also allowed Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian to understand the gap between them and a true late core forging stage expert cultivator. Actually, Lu Ping had some guesses about the reason why the demon race was hiding here. Seeing Lu Ping in deep thought, Ji Xianxian couldn't help but ask, Senior Brother Lu, have you thought of something? Lu Ping said seriously, I think I should know why they're hiding here. Seeing Ji Xuanchuan's questioning gaze, Lu Ping said, there was originally a teleportation array that led to the deep-sea demon region. Just as Lu Ping spoke up to hear, Yin Xianchu suddenly raised his head and looked towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping nodded and said, I once saw AOU return to the deep-sea demon region through the teleportation array after meeting with martial uncle Xian Yin here. Yin Xianchu suddenly interrupted Lu Ping and said, how do you know that it leads to the deep-sea demon region? Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, then said, a few days ago, the sect issued an order to search for AOU's traces in the North Sea. I wanted to avenge martial uncle Li, so I thought of this, so I took the risk to activate the transmission array. As a result, I arrived at the deep-sea demon region. Afterwards, I was chased by the demon clan. In desperation, I destroyed the transmission array and hid in the undersea mountain range. It was only until De Gui advanced to the core forging stage that he sent the traction array disk of the single-person transmission array I set up in the undersea mountain range back to Huangli Island. Fortunately, I was able to return before the demon clan broke through the island's protective array. Lu Ping looked at Yin Xuanchu's slightly excited expression and continued, I suspect that the demon clan is taking advantage of the confrontation between Zhenling and Xianling sect. Our sects Tian Shui Laozu and Xianling sects Dao Yan Laozu aren't on Huanyu Island to restore the transmission array here. This way, the demon clan will have another secret channel to launch attacks on the various sects in the North Sea. After all, the reason why we wanted to enter the Eastern Sea through the transmission array on Huanyu Island was because these two Laozu weren't on Huanyu Island. At this moment, Lu Ping and Ji Xianxian heard Yin Xianchu say in a low voice, this transmission array was originally secretly constructed by Mother for the sake of meeting Father. Father knew of the existence of this transmission array, but Mother never told Father about it. Father also never had the idea of using this transmission array. Mother never betrayed the demon clan because of Father, and Father never betrayed the human clan because of Mother. Ji Xianxian patted Yin Xuanchu's shoulder and didn't say anything else. As the three of them spoke, the hazy silhouette of Huanyu Island had already appeared on the surface of the sea. Lu Ping let out a long sigh of relief and said, I didn't think that we would still have to charge into Huanyu Island. I only hope that there won't be any slip-ups this time. Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu both knew that the secret transmission array discovered by Lu Ping just so happened to be occupied by a group of demon clan. Although the secret of the transmission array wasn't exposed, Yin Xianchu couldn't use the transmission array to head to the Midlands. He could only prepare for the worst and place all his hopes on the transmission array that led to the Eastern Sea from Huanyu Island. However, just as the three of them were immersed in their thoughts, a long howl suddenly came from the surface of the sea behind them. Their expressions changed, and when they turned around to look, a green streak of light had already streaked across the sky. Before the howl dissipated, the streak of light had already landed in front of the three of them. Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu revealed vigilant expressions, but Lu Ping's expression didn't change. He bowed first and said, Disciple greets martial uncle Xianshu. Ji Xianxian also bowed. Yin Xuanchu's expression fluctuated, but in the end, he still bowed towards spiritual master Xianshu. Spiritual master Xianshu glanced at Yin Xianchu indifferently and said coldly, when your father and mother got married back then, I already expected this outcome. However, I didn't think that I would be the one to carry out this matter today. Don't hold any resentment towards the sect. Our sect is also forced to do this. Yin Xianchu clenched his fists tightly. His lowered head hid the expression on his face. Ji Xianxian hesitated for a moment, but he still took a small step in front of Yin Xianchu, blocking half of Yin Xuanchu's body. He bowed deeply and said, Martial uncle, junior brother Xianchu is the only descendant of martial uncle Xianyin. There are no outsiders here, so please let junior brother Xianchu go. When spiritual master Xianshu saw Ji Xianxian like this, although his expression was indifferent, his eyes emitted a deep light. In the end, he sighed and said, It's impossible to let him go. I, Xianshu, am in charge of the sect's rules, and I've never shown any mercy. However, sigh, so be it. Today, I'll make the decision. As long as you allow me to personally dissolve your golden core and shatter your core space, I'll spare your life. However, from today onwards, you'll have to spend the rest of your life under house arrest on Tianling Mountain. In this way, the senior and junior brothers who were implicated by you will also receive a lighter punishment in the sect. Ji Xianxian said anxiously, Martial uncle, how can this be? Wouldn't shattering the core space be a fate worse than death for us cultivators? Spiritual Master Xianshu didn't comment on Ji Xuanchuan's pleas. He only looked at Yin Xianchu and said, what do you think? Yin Xuanchu's fists within his sleeves clenched even tighter, and a trace of green faintly appeared on his white knuckles. In the end, Yin Xianchu seemed to have made some sort of decision. His tensed body suddenly relaxed, and he said bitterly, I'm willing, Martial Uncle Xianshu. Lu Ping suddenly took a step forward and interrupted Yin Xuanchu's words. He said, Disciple has been comprehending swordsmanship in recent years and has gained some insights. Not long ago, I was lucky enough to kill a late-stage core-forging demon race cultivator. I've always heard that Martial Uncle's magic power is boundless, and that you're the #1 person in our sect's second-generation disciples below the 3 truths and 4 spirits. Disciple has overestimated his own abilities, and would like to ask Martial Uncle for advice on swordsmanship. I hope that Martial Uncle can grant my wish. Ji Xianxian stared at Lu Ping's back dumbfoundedly. Yin Xianchu suddenly raised his head and opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Spiritual Master Xianshu also seemed to have been stirred up by Lu Ping's presumptuous words. He looked at Lu Ping and asked in amusement and curiosity, what did you say? This is simply preposterous. Buzz. The golden scale sword hovered above Lu Ping's head and pointed at Spiritual Master Xianshu from afar. He performed a sword salute of a junior and used his actions to once again verify what he had just said. Spiritual Master Xianshu suddenly became furious, but he forcibly suppressed his anger. Instead, he laughed and said, Good, good, good. As expected of senior sister Lu Tianling's good disciple. You're just as lawless as you are. Don't think that you can be complacent just because you defeated a late-stage core-forging demon race cultivator. That late-stage core-forging demon race cultivator is just an existence at the bottom. Didn't you want to spar with the old man? The old man will fulfill your wish today. I'll let you see the true difference between late-stage core-forging demon race and mid-stage core-forging demon race. I'll also let you understand that the difference in strength between late-stage core-forging demon race and mid-stage core-forging demon race will be even greater due to the difference in the quality of the second type of spirit treasure. Yin Xianchu suddenly said, Senior brother Lu, don't fight with Martial Uncle Xianshu. I'll go back with him. What answered Yin Xianchu was a sky-shaking sword cry from the golden scale sword above Lu Ping's head. Ji Xianxian grabbed Yin Xianchu and fled in the direction of Universe Island with all his might. At the same time, he said, let's go. Don't waste the opportunity that senior brother Lu has earned for you. How can you be content if you don't give it a try? Yin Xianchu allowed Ji Xianxian to pull him away. When he turned his head, he only saw the golden brilliance that filled the sky, forming a huge vortex in the sky. The sword light within the vortex formed a huge sword formation in an orderly manner, covering half of the sky behind Yin Xianchu. At the same time, it also blocked Spiritual Master Xuanchu's path of pursuit. Yin Xianchu seemed to see Lu Ping's unwavering determination from his back. Lu Ping's first move was the limit of his current swordsmanship. The rotating sword formation, with the golden scale sword at the center, surged towards Spiritual Master Xianshu. Spiritual Master Xianshu stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the orderly sword formation that Lu Ping had mastered pressing towards him from all directions. Spiritual Master Xianshu, who was forcibly suppressing his rage, couldn't help but have a trace of solemnity in his eyes. Lu Ping, a third-generation disciple of Zhenling who had just advanced to the 5th layer of the core forging realm. Spiritual Master Xianshu, a veteran late-stage core forging realm expert of Zhenling who was at the peak of the 8th layer of the core forging realm. In the distance, where the sea and the sky met, a white mark suddenly appeared. The white mark quickly rushed towards the two sides of the battle. When it got close, it was Spiritual Master Su Weihong of Xianling sect who had rushed over with Spiritual Master Xianshu. Seeing that the sword light that filled the sky actually included him, Su Weihong was startled. Then, a look of joy appeared on his face. If Lu Xianping was here, then Yin Xianchu shouldn't be far away. The current situation was obviously because of Yin Xianchu. This Lu Xianping actually didn't hesitate to challenge a famous cultivator among the second-generation disciples of Zhenling. Su Weihong shouted, "Lu Xianping, how dare you? You actually dare to attack your own sect's senior." Su Weihong deliberately roared when he spoke. His voice spread in all directions, as if he wanted to let all the people of the North Sea know about this news. Su Weihong's eyes turned and he hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Martial Uncle Xianshu, I'll temporarily block your sect's junior brother Lu Xianping. You first go after that vile spawn Yin Xianchu and clean up the sect." Scram! Scram! What answered him was Lu Ping and Spiritual Master Xuanchu's angry shouts. A powerful divine sense attack carried a huge pressure and rushed towards Su Weihong. Su Weihong's face suddenly turned deathly pale. Dang 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 dang, he stepped on the small boat under his feet and took a few steps back. The silver boat seemed to have encountered a hurricane on the sea and was pushed back more than 100 feet in an instant. Chapter 479. Su Weihong's face was gloomy. He turned around to steer the flying boat around Lu Ping's sword formation. However, at this time, Lu Ping seemed to have reached the limit of his control over the sword formation. A huge whirlpool of swordsmanship roared down, engulfing Su Weihong along with it. "Lu Xianping, how dare you?" Su Weihong's eyes twitched. He waved his hand and released a ray of light to protect himself. He turned around and hid behind Taoist Xianshu. He didn't believe that Lu Ping would really kill him, but it was possible that Lu Ping would seriously injure him. However, he also knew that Taoist Xianshu wouldn't ignore him. With Taoist Xianshu, a famous late-stage core forging cultivator in the North Sea, Su Weihong didn't think that Lu Ping would be his opponent. Looking at Lu Ping's sword formation, Taoist Xianshu's expression became more and more dignified. As Lu Ping's cultivation increased, and his understanding of the sword formation became more profound, the power of the Sea of All Rivers sword art in Lu Ping's hands became more and more earth-shattering. He was worthy of being an outstanding existence among the third-generation disciples. Even the third-generation disciples who had cultivated for hundreds of years and reached the sixth layer of core forging might not be able to comprehend this sword technique. At the very least, his disciple, Xian Xiang, was far from being able to reach this level. Taoist Xianshu looked at this martial nephew in front of him with a complicated expression. His clothes fluttered without any wind, and layers of protective gang qi expanded from his body. 7 layers spread out in a row. These 7 layers of protective gang qi surged with each other, forming a vague wall of countless giant trees in front of Taoist Xianshu. 10,000 wood barrier. Lu Ping's pupils shrunk. Enlightened Master Xianshu's protective aura was condensed from 7 extraordinary items, raising his defensive skill to the level of a great skill. Lu Ping had seen the wood forest wall, used by a Wang clan cultivator in the Eastern Sea's 3 Clans Island. But back then, that Wang clan cultivator's wood forest wall was only at the level of a lesser skill. Compared to Enlightened Master Xianshu's wood forest wall, the difference was like heaven and earth. Taoist Xianshu naturally wouldn't use his protective aura to resist Lu Ping's sword technique. This was just a precaution. From this, it can be seen that Taoist Xianshu was very cautious and attached importance to Lu Ping. Master Xianshu walked a few steps on the surface of the sea in a mysterious manner. At the same time, his hands quickly formed a few hand seals. He opened his mouth and chanted. Then, he pointed at the surface of the sea. A ball of green light the size of a human head entered the sea. Then, the surface of the sea began to crackle like boiling water. Lu Ping scanned the area with his divine sense and soon noticed the changes in the water. Countless sword rays suddenly changed their direction and pointed downward as Lu Ping made a series of hand seals. Taoist Xian Shu's face finally showed a trace of surprise. To be able to respond so quickly, it was obvious that Lu Ping's divine sense had already reached the level of a late-stage core forging cultivator. At this time, Taoist Xian Shu's spell had already been completed. It was too late to make any changes. Countless seaweeds and seaweed broke through the surface of the water. Like a group of demons, they flew towards the sword lights dancing in the sky. The sword lights in the sword formation quickly slashed towards the branches and vines. However, they found that these things were not as weak as they had imagined. The tough branches often needed 4 or 5 slashes from the psychic sword light to break. However, after these 4 or 5 slashes, the psychic sword light contained a trace of Lu Ping's true essence was almost consumed by more than half. Fortunately, Lu Ping had already made some changes to the sword formation. Countless sword lights crisscrossed in the sky. The entire 100 rivers into the sea sword formation simultaneously transformed into 18 small sword formations, each fighting independently. Although each small sword formation was dozens of times weaker than the big sword formation, it was much more flexible. The sword lights in each small sword formation struck the mutated seaweed and retreated. In the blink of an eye, Taoist Xian Shu's divine sense was crushed by Lu Ping's 18 sword formations. Then, the 18 sword formations clanged loudly, and the flying sword lights instantly formed a complete 100 rivers into the sea sword formation. Taoist Xian Shu smiled and said, "You can control the formations so skillfully. I forgot that as an alchemy grandmaster, you must have a divine sense that far surpasses cultivators of the same level. If I'm not wrong, your divine sense is not inferior to a cultivator in the 8th or 9th layer of the core forging realm." Lu Ping smiled indifferently and said, "You flatter me, martial uncle. Please enlighten me." Taoist Xian Shu laughed and said, "Your strength is indeed not bad among cultivators of the same level. Perhaps you really killed Taoist Master Lu Hai in a head-on battle. However, if you want to challenge me with just that, then you're still far from it. Ever since you advanced to the core forging realm and returned to the North Sea, everything has been too smooth. You almost never suffered any setbacks. Fine, today I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of senior sister Lu Tianling. It's better than being arrogant in the future and falling into someone else's trap." Lu Ping didn't say anything. The 100 rivers into the sea sword formation slowly descended and surrounded Taoist Xian Shu from all directions. A slingshot suddenly appeared in Taoist Xian Shu's hand. 2 small wooden branches extended outwards, each with a belt made of unknown beast tendons. The 2 belts finally fused together and formed a leather cushion to hold the pill. Taoist Xian Shu held the wooden bow in his left hand. He pinched the leather cushion with his right hand and pulled it back. The 2 beast tendons immediately elongated. At the same time, a green light flashed on the leather cushion in his right hand. The green light grew brighter and brighter until it formed a green ball of light the size of an eyeball. Taoist Xian Shu loosened his right hand and the green ball of light disappeared in a flash. Then, an explosion rang out in the middle of Lu Ping's sword formation. Lu Ping's expression changed. In his divine sense, he discovered that after the green ball of light smashed into several psychic sword lights, it suddenly exploded. The psychic sword lights around the green ball of light were instantly extinguished. A space with a circumference of 3 feet appeared in the center of the green ball of light's explosion. Lu Ping directed the sword formation to close in on Taoist Xian Shu. Countless psychic sword lights cut deep marks on Taoist Xian Shu's aura shield, but they quickly recovered. Taoist Xian Shu's figure flashed, and a series of green lights flashed. Lu Ping's divine sense changed rapidly. He directed the sword formation with the intention of blocking Taoist Xian Shu in the middle of the sword formation's encirclement. Unknowingly, Taoist Xian Shu had already appeared in the space of 3 feet that the green ball of light had exploded. A look of joy flashed in Lu Ping's eyes. The surrounding psychic sword lights suddenly reversed and rushed towards Taoist Xian Shu from all directions to kill him. Taoist Xian Shu seemed to have deliberately entered this space to give the opportunity to Lu Ping. Just when the countless psychic sword lights were about to turn Taoist Xian Shu into a hedgehog, Taoist Xian Shu suddenly raised his hands. Just like a dandelion blown away by a gentle breeze, countless green light spots fluttered in the air and accurately stuck to the psychic sword lights that were rushing towards him from all directions from Lu Ping. Lu Ping's heart jumped. This was exactly the same method that Taoist Lu Hai had used to fight against his own great spiritual sword technique. After that, Lu Ping discovered the difference between the two. These green light spots did not absorb the Zhen Yuan contained in the psychic sword lights, causing the psychic sword lights to self-destruct. Instead, they directly exploded and completely destroyed the psychic sword lights. Then, countless sounds of explosions rang out like firecrackers. The psychic sword lights that filled the sky were all detonated by the green light spots in the sky. Lu Ping's great spiritual sword technique was so easily broken by Taoist Xian Shu. Looking at Taoist Xian Shu's faint smile, Lu Ping's face was as calm as water. The golden scale sword whimpered and retreated, circling around Lu Ping like a little kid who had been greatly wronged. Although the great spiritual sword formation is exquisite and powerful, but in your hands, it is only a so-so. Taoist Xian Shu faintly said. Then, he frowned. His body still stood still. Suddenly, the 10,000 woods wall in front of him grew countless branches and weaved them into a vine shield. Then, with a pooh sound, the vine shield was pierced through, and a dark blue sword light flashed in front of the 10,000 woods wall. Shapeless sword art, I didn't expect you to practice this set of magic arts. Rumor has it that in order to refine this set of magic arts, not only do you need an invisible flying sword, you also need a strange natural wonder called shapeless water. It seems that your luck is not small, to be able to obtain this kind of natural treasure. Unfortunately, your sword art is incomplete and can only reach the minor spiritual level. Moreover, if your flying sword was a psychic magic treasure, it would be fine, but it is just an ordinary magic treasure. Its quality is too low, and it is far from being able to deal with the old man. Taoist Xian Shu was indeed worthy of being a veteran late-core forging cultivator who had been famous for hundreds of years. With just a glance, he was able to see through most of Lu Ping's methods. While breaking Lu Ping's spiritual power, he also casually commented on it. Lu Ping's face was gloomy. Even though he had the strength to kill Taoist Lu Hai, but in front of this kind of famous cultivator, Lu Ping felt that he was at his wit's end. Thinking back to the primordial crocodile Taoist Ao Li he encountered at the bottom of the sea, it was only a casual attack. Lu Ping, Ji Xianxian, and Yin Xianchu joined forces to resist it, but in the end, they still retreated in a sorry state. They were almost surrounded by the monster cultivators who rushed over. If it wasn't for the fact that these monster cultivators seemed to have some misgivings and didn't want to expose too much, it was likely that Lu Ping and the other two would not have been able to escape unscathed. Taoist Xian Shu sneered and suddenly leaped up, saying, since it's an instruction, martial nephew Lu will also receive a move from the old man. In the future, senior martial sister Lu will not blame the old man for not fulfilling his responsibility as a martial uncle. Taoist Xian Shu flew in the air and a peachwood longsword suddenly appeared in his hand. He pointed it towards the sky and a green lightning bolt as thick as a water bucket appeared out of thin air and landed on the peachwood longsword. As the lightning flickered, Taoist Xian Shu immediately slashed the wooden sword and shouted towards Lu Ping, lightning guiding technique, quick. Just when Taoist Xian Shu's longsword was pointed towards Lu Ping felt a great crisis descending upon him. The 7 treasures thunder calabash in his core space rapidly trembled, as if it was trying its best to break free from the shackles of the gold core. How could Lu Ping dare to reveal this treasure in front of others? Looking at the green lightning bolt rushing towards him, Lu Ping did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. The golden scale sword once again let out a long cry. A white sword light that reached the sky seemed to want to cut open a door in this part of the world and slashed towards the green lightning bolt. At the same time, on the surface of the sea dozens of miles away in the direction that Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu had escaped to, a violent spiritual energy fluctuation suddenly rang out along with a deafening roar. This time, Lu Ping's expression finally changed drastically. Chapter 480. The green thunder that had been shattered by the true essence one sword strike passed through the golden scale sword's shadow and condensed back together. The color of the green thunder seemed to have faded a little, but it still contained a tyrannical power. Lu Ping's face was filled with panic as he leaped back in the direction of the explosion. At the same time, a small flag appeared in his hand and he waved it in front of him. A layer of black water curtain appeared in front of him. However, as soon as the green lightning came into contact with the black water curtain, it was easily torn apart by the green lightning in the midst of a series of electric sparks. Sage Xianshu looked at the small flag in Lu Ping's hand that was constantly waving the black water curtain. He said with some surprise, "Water control flag? I didn't expect the mystic flame to let you take away this treasure from the inheritance space." Before Lu Ping could reply, when the green lightning finally broke through the black light curtain of the water control flag, Lu Ping's true Dipper Chi suddenly bloomed layer by layer like a lotus. The transformation of the water curtain true Dipper Chi caused Lu Ping to be wrapped in a tier 6 lotus flower. This time, the green lightning that broke through the black water curtain of the water control flag was no longer as powerful as before. It was firmly blocked by the blue tier 6 lotus flower outside the true Dipper Chi protection. Sage Xianshu looked at the lotus flower that Lu Ping's true Dipper Chi protection in amazement. He asked curiously, "The water curtain true Dipper Chi can have such a magical transformation?" In this way, the defense of the 6th layer true Dipper Chi protection can actually catch up to the old man's 7th layer true Dipper Chi protection. This is really strange. When your teacher condensed the true Dipper Chi protection, he did not have such a magical power like yours. When Sage Xianshu saw that Lu Ping could actually withstand his attack, he kept the peachwood sword in his hand and did not attack again. Lu Ping gave Sage Xianshu a deep look. After swallowing a precious elixir to recover his true essence, his pale face recovered a little. He turned around and rushed toward the source of the heaven and earth spiritual energy fluctuation dozens of miles behind him. When Sage Xianshu saw that Lu Ping was leaving, he did not stop him. Instead, he turned around and looked behind him. Su Weihong had been hiding behind Sage Xianshu before the battle between Lu Ping and Sage Xianshu. It was unknown when Su Weihong had fainted behind Sage Xianshu. Taoist Master Xianshu thought for a moment, but didn't act to save him. Instead, he pointed a finger and the small boat that Taoist Master Su Weihong was controlling floated towards Taoist Master Xianshu. Taoist Master Xianshu threw Su Weihong into the small boat and stood on the surface of the sea without moving. His eyes were looking towards a direction several dozen li away as he muttered, "As fellow disciples of the same sect, this old man has already done his best. Whether or not you can escape in the end will depend on your own luck. In this way, even if you all die, the sect will not have to bear the reputation of killing their own disciples." Lu Ping immediately used his escape technique. His entire body seemed to have transformed into a puddle of water as he rapidly flew across the surface of the sea. At this moment, Lu Ping was no longer in the mood to be complacent about receiving Sage Xianshu's attack. He never thought that there would actually be someone who had predicted their destination and set up an ambush for Yin Xianchu and Ji Zishuan when they approached Huanyu Island. To Lu Ping, a distance of dozens of miles was nothing more than a moment's work. However, when Lu Ping was 7 or 8 miles away from the battlefield, he stopped using his escape technique. Lu Ping swept his divine sense outwards and the scene that was several miles away was immediately reflected in his divine sense. "Ouyang Weijian, you are a famous cultivator of the North Sea. How could you be in cahoots with the scum of the Overturned Seas gang? Could it be that your Xianling sect has already colluded with the Overturned Seas gang?" Standing in front of Ji Xianxian were 3 puppets whose strength was not below that of the core forging realm. Under Ji Xuanxuan's command, the 3 puppets fearlessly charged towards the person in front of them. Around Ji Xianxian and his 3 puppets, a black shadow moved from east to west, attacking the enemies in front of them. The black shadow would often retreat after a single strike, circle around the 3 puppets, and then attack from another direction. This was precisely the killing technique that Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu used with great rapport. Ji Xianxian used the fearless charge of the puppets, while Yin Xianchu was responsible for restraining and disturbing the enemy. When the 2 of them worked together, they would often cause their opponents to be distracted and lose sight of one another, allowing them to defeat opponents who were stronger than them. However, this time, the 2 of them seemed to be unable to cooperate with each other. This was because the person obstructing them wasn't just Ouyang Weijian. There were also 5 or 6 core forging realm cultivators whose cultivation was similar to theirs. Your words are quite unreasonable. Why can't my overturned seas gang cooperate with Xianling sect? On the contrary, one of you is actually the descendant of a human and a demon. This is the true person in the cultivation world who should be killed. My overturned seas gang is enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens, while you, Jinling, are the one who colludes with a monster and harbors filth. A tall cultivator directed the crowd to cooperate with Ouyang Weijian to firmly block Yin Xianchu and Yin Xianchu. Then, they began to flank them from both sides. Everyone supported each other, and their cooperation was quite exquisite. Gradually, they surrounded Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian, and gradually reduced the range of Yin Xuanchu's movements, forcing the 2 of them to be unable to fully display their cooperation. Seeing that victory was within his grasp, the overturned seas gang cultivator who spoke earlier said to Yin Xianchu complacently, "I've long since expected that you, Jinling, are unwilling to bear the reputation of murdering your own clan's disciples and want to let you go. In this case, for the sake of the human cultivators of the North Sea, my overturned seas gang may have to slay demons and eliminate devils. We'll talk about it after we kill a monster like you. As for the other one, I believe that Brother Ouyang would also be happy to have one less competitor in the North Sea." Ouyang Weijian remained silent, but the flowing wind sword in his hand became increasingly swift and fierce. It even forced the overturned seas gang cultivators who were assisting him to the side to be unable to help. The leader of the overturned seas gang had a rather displeased expression on his face, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Instead, he directed the crowd to close in on the 2 of them, further compressing the space that Yin Xianchu had to deal with. Seeing that the 2 of them were in an increasingly precarious situation, Lu Ping, who was several kilometers away, still had no intention of helping them. In reality, enlightened Master Xian Shu was known in Jinling as the number 1 person below the 3 truths and 4 spirits. Among the late core forging cultivators of the North Sea, his strength was considered extremely tyrannical. Just now, Lu Ping had a sudden inspiration. At the last moment, he had used the white jade lotus on his protective stellar energy to block enlightened Master Xian Shu's cyan lightning. This had already consumed most of Lu Ping's spiritual essence, but this was already extremely valuable. However, Lu Ping had previously used the white jade lotus in conjunction with the water-controlling flag to block enlightened Master Ao Li's attack in the deep sea demon region. Now, he realized that if he used the white jade lotus in conjunction with his protective stellar energy, the power it could display would probably be even greater. Unfortunately, Lu Ping didn't have the time to ponder these things right now. Once Lu Ping was able to combine this natal magic treasure with the magical power that he cultivated, its power would undoubtedly increase by several folds. He also wouldn't have been injured by enlightened Master Xian Shu's all-out attack after expending so much of his spiritual essence. Fortunately, when the green thunder exploded on Lu Ping's protective stellar energy, the 7 treasures thunder calabash in the core space also spat out a trace of 7-colored thunder light, which followed along Lu Ping's spiritual essence and covered the protective stellar energy. When the raging green thunder light above the lotus stellar energy encountered the seven-colored thunder light hidden in Lu Ping's spiritual essence, a lot of the green thunder light was inexplicably absorbed by the seven-colored thunder light, reducing the damage to Lu Ping's protective stellar energy. Lu Ping first fought with the demon clan cultivators on Huangli Island, and then killed enlightened Master Lu Hai. His spiritual essence was already exhausted. After that, Lu Ping and the others only spent half a day to heal their injuries and restore their spiritual essence. Despite Lu Ping's supply of high-quality medicinal pills, they immediately fled to Huanyu Island and fought with enlightened Master Xian Shu. Even though Lu Ping had smelted the Xianyuan heavy water and his spiritual essence was unimaginably vigorous, it still couldn't support such a method of use. Previously, when Lu Ping arrived, he saw that Yin Xianchu and Ji Zishuan were temporarily fine, so he hid and first recovered the spiritual essence in his body that had been depleted. However, when Lu Ping sat cross-legged on the surface of the sea and was about to circulate his spiritual essence, he first spat out a mouthful of extravasated blood. Lu Ping secretly sighed. In the end, he still couldn't completely withstand enlightened Master Xian Shu's attack of the green thunder light. Previously, if it wasn't for the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash secretly dispelling it, and if it wasn't for the fact that Lu Ping was anxious about the life and death of his two friends, he momentarily forgot to check the injuries in his body. Perhaps, in front of enlightened Master Xian Shu, Lu Ping would already be unable to contain the injuries in his body. Chapter 481. With a crack, one of Ji Xuanxuan's puppets was shattered by the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang. Ouyang Weijian's flowing wind sword was like an all-pervasive breeze, taking advantage of the gap created by the puppet's destruction to blow countless sword lights in. Ji Xuanxuan's expression changed. He shook the cloth bag in his hand and another puppet flew out, blocking the gap created earlier. However, this puppet was clearly only at the late stage of the blood condensation realm and was far inferior to the previous puppet. It only took a few attacks from the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang before it shattered into pieces. Previously, controlling the three-core forging stage puppets had already reached Ji Xuanxuan's limit. The consumption of a large amount of spiritual sense caused Ji Xuanxuan's originally pale face to be even more abnormally bright red. After the two puppets were shattered, Ji Xianxian was no longer able to contain the injuries in his body. Blood dripped down from the corner of his mouth, dyeing the clothes in front of him red. However, how could Ji Xianxian still care about the injuries on his body at this moment? After the puppet shattered, the two of them were no longer able to resist the attacks of the six opponents. Ouyang Weijian seized the opportunity to execute the Wind Flow Sword of the Merry Wind 18 swords and cut through the defense of the two in one go. His Wind Flow Sword was known for its speed, and after breaking through the defense of the two, Yin Xianchu, who had been moving around in all directions, was instantly entangled by him. Ji Xianxian gritted his teeth and took out a shining bronze mirror. He rushed to the position of the puppet that was destroyed earlier and temporarily blocked the other party's attacks. The attacks of Ouyang Weijian and the members of the Overturned Sea gang did not have the slightest effect on Ji Xuanxuan's golden light mirror. On the contrary, a few rays of sword light and other colorful spells suddenly shot out from the golden light mirror, counterattacking Ouyang Weijian and the members of the Overturned Sea gang. These attacks were the same attacks that Ouyang Weijian and the others had used to attack Ji Xianxian. Ji Xuanxuan's magic treasure was actually able to reflect the attacks. Ji Xianxian shouted in a low voice, "Now!" Ouyang Weijian's expression changed. He didn't care about the few flowing wind sword lights that were bounced back by the golden light mirror. He turned the flowing wind sword in his hand and formed a huge wind cocoon around Ouyang Weijian, wrapping him up completely. At the same time, his warning voice came from the wind cocoon, "Be careful." At that moment, the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction were in the midst of defending against the attacks reflected by the golden mirror of light. However, as they were utilizing various techniques to defend against the reflected attacks, Ji Xuanxuan's shout suddenly rang out in their ears. The hearts of the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction grew tense and they raised their heads to look in Ji Xuanchuan's direction. Coincidentally, they saw the golden mirror of light above Ji Xuanchuan's head shining with a dazzling light. Instantly, they felt a stabbing pain coming from their eyes and tears flowed uncontrollably from their eyes. It was as though the entire world was covered in gold. The members of the Overturning Seas faction were all ruthless people who had survived through life and death battles. By now, Ouyang Weijian's warning had arrived. Naturally, they wouldn't panic just because their eyes were temporarily blinded. However, just as they spread out their divine senses, they discovered that not only were the golden lights temporarily blinded, even their divine senses were distorted. They were unable to sense the situation around them. Only then did the members of the Overturning Seas faction panic slightly. However, at that moment, a ghost-like figure suddenly leapt about within the golden light. Two miserable cries rang out in succession. The remaining 3 members of the Overturning Seas faction were terrified. They used all of their defensive techniques without any regard for anything else, afraid that they would be ambushed by the other party in this situation where they couldn't see and their divine senses were distorted. As expected, another "pu" sound rang out, followed by a muffled grunt. Instantly, the members of the Overturning Seas faction noticed that their divine senses had returned to normal. When they opened their eyes, they could finally see what was happening before them, despite the stinging pain in their eyes. However, the scene before them shocked the cultivator leading the Overturning Seas faction. In that short period of time, one of the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction had been beheaded. He was beyond dead. As for the other cultivator, his chest had been stabbed by a sword and he floated on the surface of the ocean. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Even if he could survive, his core space had been broken and he could only become a cripple. In addition, there was another cultivator whose face was pale and filled with lingering fear. The shield before his chest had been pierced, leaving a hole in it. The wind cocoon that was enveloped by the flowing wind sword light instantly scattered, revealing an expressionless Ouyang Weijian. The expression of the cultivator in charge of the Overflowing Seas gang contorted. Ouyang Weijian seemed to know what was going to happen to the two of them when Ji Xianxian brought out the golden light mirror. Despite Ouyang Weijian's warning, the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang still roared at Ouyang Weijian in a low voice, "Why didn't you mention that the two of them had such a divine ability?" What was originally in the bag had turned out to be an unforeseen event. 2 mid-stage core forging realm cultivators had fallen one after another. Even if the Overturning Seas faction had the East Sea Crystal Palace as their backer, this was still a heavy loss for the Overturning Seas faction. Naturally, Ouyang Weijian wouldn't say that he had suffered under the divine power of these 2 cultivators. He pointed his flowing wind sword at them from afar and said coldly, "If I were you, I would first finish off these 2 people in front of me. As for what kind of divine power or magic arts they have, why should I tell you?" At this moment, Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu weren't much better off. Under everyone's attacks, Ji Xianxian had forcefully activated the divine power and magic arts contained within the golden mirror. Even though Yin Xianchu had seized the opportunity to kill one of the cultivators from the Overturning Seas faction and the other one had suffered heavy injuries and was no longer in danger, Ji Xianxian had also suffered a backlash because he had forcefully used the golden mirror to distort the divine will of 6 cultivators of the same level as him. Blood flowed from his mouth and nose, and his face turned purplish gold. He looked like he was on the verge of collapse. If not for Yin Xianchu supporting him from the side, Ji Xianxian probably wouldn't even have the strength to stand. The leader of the Overturning Seas faction finally looked towards the 2 Zhenling cultivators. He said word by word, "Kill them. Grind their bones and scatter their ashes." His cold voice was filled with boundless killing intent, as if it wanted to freeze the seawater beneath his feet. Yin Xianchu shielded Ji Xianxian behind him. 2 pitch-black daggers suddenly appeared in his hands. Ji Xianxian suddenly said weakly behind him, "Don't worry about me later. Just focus on escaping. Their target is you, so they won't do anything to me. Even if the Overturning Seas faction wants to kill me, Ouyang Weijian will stop them. Otherwise, our sect will definitely not let this matter rest. Ji Xianxian understood his good friend too well. He knew that Yin Xianchu definitely wouldn't escape alone in such a hopeless situation. That was why he deliberately said these words, hoping that Yin Xianchu would have the opportunity to escape first. However, Yin Xianchu clearly didn't listen to these words. He gripped the daggers in his hands even tighter, and his eyes were filled with determination. Yin Xianchu suddenly let out a long howl towards the sky. His howl was filled with madness, and a gust of cold white mist suddenly erupted from Yin Xuanchu's body under Ji Xuanxuan's astonished gaze. At this moment, Lu Ping was also startled awake by Yin Xuanchu's long howl. He wiped away the trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, and a green light flickered in Lu Ping's eyes. The scene several kilometers away instantly entered his eyes. Lu Ping never expected that the injuries on his body would be so severe. Furthermore, they would erupt right when he was about to enter the battlefield. The lives of his two good friends were hanging by a thread, yet he couldn't help them at all. Just now, he clearly saw that Ouyang Weijian's cultivation had already reached the 5th layer of the core forging realm. Moreover, he was at the peak of the 5th layer, and could advance to the 6th layer at any time. With Lu Ping's current state, once he made a move against Ouyang Weijian at his peak, he would only be courting death. Just as Lu Ping's thoughts raced, Yin Xuanchu's howl rang out. Lu Ping immediately sensed that something was amiss. When he looked again, the true eyes of the three pure ones could no longer see through the white mist that had already enveloped Yin Xianchu due to the distance. He could only faintly see the shadow of a white whip swaying back and forth within the white mist. Ouyang Weijian's heart skipped a beat, as if he sensed that someone was spying on him. However, when he spread out his divine sense in all directions, he couldn't find anything. When he looked at the scene within the white mist again, he seemed to have discovered something. He exclaimed to the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang, "This person is indeed a monster. Let's join forces and eliminate him first." By then, the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang had also sensed that something was amiss. With a gloomy face, he nodded his head. The flying sword in Ouyang Weijian's hand shot out first. Next, the three cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang attacked together, attacking Yin Xianchu, who was enveloped by the white mist. Two black-colored daggers suddenly shot out from within the white mist to block Ouyang Weijian's flowing wind sword. Ouyang Weijian's face sank. Earlier, Yin Xianchu clearly did not possess this level of strength. As the attacks from the three cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang were about to make their way into the white mist, a clump of white mist suddenly split out from within the white mist. It transformed into a long whip and lashed out. There seemed to be something hidden within the white mist. Faintly, snow-white scales could be seen on the surface of the whip. The white mist whip struck one of the Overflowing Seas gang cultivators' magic treasure, sending it flying. Then, it extinguished the blue clump of flames that the other Overflowing Seas gang cultivator fired out. However, it was too late to stop the flying sword from the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang. The flying sword streaked through the white mist and Yin Xuanchu's howl of pain rang out from within the white mist. Then, a blood-red light sprayed out from within the white mist, dyeing the white mist a faint red. Immediately after, the white mist transformed. A gigantic claw wrapped in white mist suddenly reached out and slapped the flying sword that streaked through the white mist. The flying sword let out a mournful cry and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang suddenly paled. Ouyang Weijian saw the change in Yin Xianchu and looked at Ji Xianxian, who was behind him. A thought came to his mind and he said, "Let's capture that Ji Xianxian first." The leader of the Overflowing Seas gang had already understood. He nodded at his two subordinates and the two cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang immediately circled around the white mist that Yin Xianchu had transformed into. The magic treasures in their hands greeted Yin Xianchu. Yin Xianchu, who was within the white mist, let out a furious howl. He turned around and charged towards Ji Xianxian, blocking all the magic treasures that were attacking Ji Xianxian. However, Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang took the opportunity to attack again. Two flying swords streaked through the white mist and Yin Xianchu let out another howl of pain. Chapter 482. At that moment, Lu Ping could no longer care about the injuries on his body and the depletion of his true essence. He took out a jade bottle from his storage magic artifact and poured out a scarlet pill. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment, then opened his mouth and swallowed the pill. The moment the pill entered his mouth, a bone-deep pain swept through his entire body. Lu Ping could not help but groan in pain. However, what followed the intense pain was the rapid circulation of true essence within Lu Ping's body. The two high-grade spirit stones in his hands seemed to have been eroded by the wind. In just a moment, they were reduced to ashes. At that moment, a loud rumble rang out in the sky. Lu Ping was overjoyed. When he raised his head to look, he saw that in the sky above the battle between Yin Xianchu and the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang, a grey cloud had unknowingly condensed. However, the cloud looked very strange. It did not look like it was about to rain. Instead, it looked like a cloud of dust. In fact, as the dust gathered thicker and thicker, it wasn't lightning that accompanied the loud rumbles. Instead, it was huge boulders that crashed into the ground. Skies collapse. This was the ultimate skill that made Sage Guoxianshan famous in the North Sea. Skies collapse. It's Guoxianshan. The leader of the Overflowing Seas gang clearly recognized this great divine ability. He immediately roared in horror. On the other side, the expressions of the cultivators from the Overflowing Seas gang who were besieging Ji Xianxian changed. If Guoxianshan had really arrived, then not a single one of them would be able to escape. When they thought of this, they could not help but slow down. Yin Xianchu, who was within the white mist, seized the opportunity and sent the two magic treasures attacking Ji Xianxian flying. No, this is Sky's collapse, but it's not Guoxianshan. As Ouyang Weijian spoke, he shattered 3 boulders with a slash of his sword. However, more and more meteorites streaked across the sky, leaving trails of fiery light as they smashed down on Yin Xuanchu's group. Ouyang Weijian had no choice but to utilize the 9 merry swords to nimbly dodge the meteorites. At the same time, the flowing wind sword no longer collided head-on with the falling meteorites. Instead, it nimbly deflected the meteorites above Ouyang Weijian's head. The 9 wind swords and the 9 merry swords were obviously different. The 9 wind swords was meticulous, and its attacks were like a storm, penetrating through every opening. However, the 9 merry swords was different. This swordsmanship focused more on speed, technique, and being traceless. Lu Ping had used Xian Ling Sect's 18 merry swords as a reference several times. With a single glance, he could tell that although Ouyang Weijian had combined the 9 wind swords into one and achieved a great swordsmanship, the 9 merry swords was clearly not at the level of a great swordsmanship. However, seeing how Ouyang Weijian handled the sky's collapse with ease, it was clear that Ouyang Weijian was only one step away from combining the 9 wind swords into one and achieving a great swordsmanship. This person was truly a rare sword cultivator genius. At this moment, Lu Ping had already donned the stone armor and dove into the water. He took out the water-repelling moon pearl and quickly and stealthily moved in the direction of Yin Xuanchu's group. Although the sky's collapse was powerful, it couldn't do anything to Ouyang Weijian. On the other hand, the other 2 cultivators from the Overflowing Seas sect were flustered by the sudden attack and had already been hit by several meteorites. One of them had his protective artifact destroyed, while the other was in the process of dodging. Yin Xianchu seized the opportunity and severely injured him, causing him to vomit blood. At this moment, the leader of the Overflowing Seas sect also noticed that the power of the great swordsmanship displayed by the ambusher was far from the earth-shattering momentum of the legendary Guoxianshan's. Furthermore, when he swept his divine sense across the area, he also noticed the ambusher in the distance. It was only a 5th-layer core forging cultivator. The leader's hands formed a series of hand seals. The silver flying sword that had been smashing the meteorites above his head suddenly exploded with a silvery white sword aura. It spun and charged towards the gray clouds above his head. As the sword danced in the air, the white sword aura also spun towards the sky, shredding all the meteorites in its path into pieces. Surprisingly, this was also a great swordsmanship. At the same time, Ouyang Weijian, who was dodging on the other side, seemed to have a telepathic connection. The flowing wind sword in his hand whistled forward, closely following the leader's silver flying sword. The silver flying sword broke through the obstruction of the meteorites and finally entered the gray clouds. A series of muffled sounds rang out and rays of silver light flashed continuously within the gray clouds. Next, the flowing wind sword flew into the clouds as well, and the gray clouds were continuously blown away. The power of the meteorites falling from the sky grew weaker and weaker. Finally, a thick silvery sword aura pierced through the air from the gray clouds. After a loud explosion, the leader of the overflowing seas sect, who was on the surface of the sea, turned crimson. The gray clouds in the sky were finally broken by the combined power of the two swordsmanship. Only a dozen or so meteorites fell rapidly towards the surface of the sea. However, they were no longer a threat. However, just as the two of them were about to retrieve their flying swords, a cold harumph suddenly rang out from an unknown direction. When the leader turned around to check, he saw one of his subordinates standing there motionlessly, as though he had become a fool. The leader grew anxious and he opened his mouth to shout. However, it was already too late. A large boulder whistled down to smash his subordinate's head into his chest. The cold harumph clearly did not belong to the cultivator who had unleashed Heaven's Bane earlier. The corners of the leader's eyes twitched and he shouted, "Who is it? Who is it?" Ouyang Weijian was also bewildered. At that moment, a cultivator in his 30s suddenly flew across the sky from the direction of Universe Island. He moved past Ouyang Weijian and the overflowing seas sect cultivators to land beside Yin Xianchu, who was shrouded in white mist. He was none other than the one who had launched the sneak attack earlier. Ouyang Weijian asked in a serious tone, "Someone from Zhenling? Guoshuanshan's disciple?" Reverend Lu Xianyuan looked at Yin Xianchu beside him, then turned around and smiled. "I am Lu Xianyuan, Reverend Guoshuanshan's fifth disciple." Ouyang Weijian came to a sudden realization. Lu Xianyuan, Lu Ziyuan. So you were one of the North Sea's 18 generals back then. I haven't heard any news about you for the past decade or so, so I thought you had already faded into the crowd. I didn't expect you to have such accomplishments. Although Reverend Lu Xianyuan was also a third-generation disciple like Ouyang Weijian and Lu Ping, he was a late bloomer and was 100 years older than them. Although his strength might not be on par with these two geniuses from the North Sea, his ability to maintain his composure was far above theirs. Hearing Ouyang Weijian's provocative words, Reverend Lu Xianyuan still said in a calm tone, "I wouldn't dare." Junior brother Ouyang and junior brother Lu are both outstanding talents in their respective sections. I'm just a few years older, so I can't compare to the two of you. However, if junior brother Ouyang wants to teach me, then I'll naturally accompany you. When Ouyang Weijian mentioned Lu Ping, Reverend Lu Xianyuan could not help but let out a cold snort. He looked at the surface of the sea and said coldly, "You have another companion. Ask him to come out as well." Lu Xianyuan smiled and did not say anything. Yin Xianchu was wrapped in a layer of white mist, so his expression could not be seen. Although Ji Xianxian tried his best not to faint, he was also at his limit and could lose consciousness at any time. When Ouyang Weijian saw that there was no movement on the surface of the sea, he could not help but sneer. "What a cowardly fellow. Since you're not coming out, I'll kill this half-human half-demon fellow first." With that, he pointed the flowing wind sword at Yin Xianchu, who was shrouded in the white mist. With a loud clang, a grotesquely shaped stone sword swept out and blocked the flowing wind sword. Reverend Lu Xianyuan took a step forward and stood in front of Yin Xianchu. Ouyang Weijian looked at the person in front of him and asked in a deep voice, "Are you, Jinling, really going to protect a demon?" Reverend Lu Xianyuan stopped smiling and said seriously, "Even if he's a demon, he's still a demon of my Jinling. There will naturally be my, Jinlings, enforcers to clean up the sect. Aren't you stretching your hand too far? Could it be that your sect's Laozu has given the order to clean up the sect on my, Jinling's behalf?" Ouyang Weijian sneered. "Everyone has the right to kill demons. There's no need for my sect's Laozu to give the order." Reverend Lu Xianyuan said sternly, "Since that's the case, please leave. I, Jinling, can still let bygones be bygones for injuring my junior brother Ji Xianxian. If you continue to pester me, I might have to fight." Ouyang Weijian said disdainfully, "You think you're my opponent? Among the cultivators of the same rank in the North Sea, who else is worthy of being my opponent other than Lu Xianping?" The leader of the Overflowing Seas gang was already burning with rage. This time, he had brought 4 subordinates with him. He had originally thought that they could make contributions to the important figures from the palace and receive their appreciation. However, due to a series of unforeseen events, he had lost 3 of his subordinates. The remaining one was also injured, while the person he wanted to kill was still safe and sound. The silver flying sword in the leader's hand stabbed towards Lu Xianyuan as he scolded, "What's with all this nonsense? Jinling, you're so mighty." Just as the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang attacked, Ouyang Weijian also attacked. The 2 of them simultaneously attacked Reverend Lu Xianyuan. Yin Xianchu, who was beside Reverend Lu Xianyuan, was about to step forward to help, but the remaining cultivator from the Overflowing Seas gang immediately went forward to hold Yin Xianchu back. At that moment, Yin Xianchu was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Even though he had restored his half-demon form with the conviction that he would die, he had already been severely injured by Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang. If not for his half-demon form, which allowed his body to be far stronger than ordinary cultivators, he would have died a long time ago. Under the pincer attack of Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang, Reverend Lu Xianyuan quickly fell into a disadvantageous position even though he had adopted a defensive stance from the beginning. Reverend Lu Xianyuan faced the attacks calmly. His stone sword made his body watertight. Even though he was at a disadvantage, Ouyang Weijian and Yin Xianchu could not do anything to Reverend Lu Xianyuan. The more Ouyang Weijian fought, the more apprehensive he became. Lu Xianyuan had never revealed his strength in Jinling. He had only won the title of 18 Generals in the North Sea before he advanced to the core forging stage. After that, there had been no news of him for more than 10 years. Yet, his attacks were so steady and steady. He was able to persist under the joint attacks of Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overflowing Seas gang. If he were to fight Ouyang Weijian alone, he would not be much inferior. Jinling. Aside from Lu Xianping, Ji Xianxian, and Yin Xianchu, there's actually another cultivator of the same level who can match me. This person cannot be left alive. Chapter 483. Just as Ouyang Weijian made up his mind to kill perfected Lu Xianyuan, another scream was heard, followed by an angry roar from the leader of the Overturned Seas sect. The silver flying sword dodged past perfected Lu Xianyuan and shot towards the sea in front of Yin Xianchu, shouting, "Get out here!" Ouyang Weijian and the leader of the Overturned Seas sect had been keeping an eye on the enemy that had been hiding since the divine will blast that had killed one of the Overturned Seas sect's cultivators with Sky's Bane. However, to their surprise, even though the 2 of them had been carefully observing the surroundings with their spiritual force while they were working together to attack perfected Lu Xianyuan, they did not find any trace of anyone. It was as if the person just now had suddenly disappeared. However, even though Ouyang Weijian and Yin Xianchu had done their utmost to guard against a sneak attack from an enemy hiding in the shadows, they did not expect that the enemy would suddenly appear in the water behind Yin Xianchu and the Overflowing Seas gang cultivators. The faint blue sword gleam flashed by. Without the cultivator from the Overflowing Seas clan noticing, it pierced through his heart core space in one fell swoop. the cultivator died instantly. Just as the leader of the overturned sea sect shouted and stabbed the silver flying sword in his hand into the sea, a four-legged serpent with a single horn on its head suddenly emerged from the sea. Its golden horn knocked the silver flying sword away. The silver flying sword circled in the sky and turned back to attack the serpent. However, the serpent's tail swung and knocked the flying sword away again. The silver flying sword wailed as the overflowing sea sect's leader's expression finally turned solemn. Ouyang Weijian, who was battling spiritual master Lu Xianyuan, saw the strange golden jiao flaunting its prowess in the sky and his expression immediately changed. He shouted, "Be careful, it's Lu Xianping, this is his sword technique divine art." The leader had already called back his flying sword in preparation to resist the four-legged strange dragon's sudden attack. But upon hearing Ouyang Weijian's reminder, he hastily placed a glazed bell on his head and pointed his finger at the silver flying sword. The white swirling sword qi that had previously broken immortal Lu Xuanyuan's Sky's Bane great magical power appeared again and collided head-on with the strange dragon. In one fell swoop, the strange dragon's scales were smashed into pieces. However, before the leader could show a look of joy, he saw an awe-inspiring sword light spurt out from the horn of the strange dragon, bypassing the silver flying sword and slashing toward the leader. The leader didn't have time to react and directly used the glazed bell to block the true essence single chi sword. After a loud bang, the brilliance of the glazed bell dimmed. The leader was also sent flying hundreds of feet away from the surface of the sea by the golden scale sword. Only then did the tremendous force transmitted by the sword dissipate. However, without waiting for the leader to respond, the broken strange flood dragon suddenly plunged into the sea. A huge wave rose out of thin air, flashing with a cold light under the sun as it rushed towards the leader dozens of feet away. Torrent of Sword Arts. Blue Waves Incantation. Originally, the Torrent of Sword Techniques and Azure Wave Scripture were only at the level of a minor technique. But after Lu Ping comprehended dozens of sword techniques using the Thousand Snow Piles sword scripture, and combined them with the Azure Wave Scripture, the power of the Torrent of Sword Techniques had already reached the level of a major technique. However, Lu Ping was always lacking that last bit of enlightenment, so he couldn't take that last step. Under the control of the leader, the silver flying sword directly pierced a big hole in the surging torrent of sword arts. However, it was useless against a huge wave. The torrent of sword arts instantly filled the hole and continued to surge towards him. The leader's expression changed, and he moved his body to dodge. However, before he could do anything, countless tentacles suddenly stretched out from the sea under his feet, suddenly wrapping around his feet. Under the control of the gentian bead, Lu Ping could exert the power of this incantation to the level of a small magical power. However, for a cultivator like the leader who had already comprehended a great magical power, the power of the incantation of water did not matter in his eyes. The true essence under his feet surged, and in an instant, the tentacles on his feet were shattered. However, naturally, Lu Ping would not place his hopes on the incantation of water. In fact, all Lu Ping needed was the moment the leader shattered the tentacles on his feet, and the torrent of sword arts had already hit the pale golden light wall formed by the glazed bell. The torrent of sword arts came up and down, and the pale golden light wall was like a small boat in a huge wave. Although it avoided the danger of being destroyed, it was also hit full of holes. While most cultivators in the core forging stage were still comprehending the big and small magical powers, and using them as a means to win or lose, Lu Ping had already begun to ponder the several types of magical powers he had comprehended as a set of combination attacks. In a battle, he would not give his opponent any time to breathe. More and more cracks appeared on the pale golden light wall, but Lu Ping's method did not stop there. After 3 consecutive sword waves, a water whip suddenly lashed out from the sea, and before the leader could recover, it struck the pale golden light wall. The already cracked light wall quickly collapsed, and the glazed bell that was suspended in mid-air also let out a mournful cry, and fell from the leader's head. A faint crack appeared on the body of the bell. A heaven-shaking sword sound rang out, and the golden scale sword suddenly rose from the sea. Rays of psychic sword light separated from the sword body, and began to orderly arrange around the golden scale sword. This was a great swordsmanship magical power. The leader immediately felt a chill in his heart. Even though he had also grasped a great swordsmanship magical power, his proficiency level was far from that of Lu Ping's. Not to mention creating a sword formation with a swing of his sword, even that flying silver sword light consumed a great deal of the leader's mental strength. Seeing that the sword formation had already surrounded the leader, and that if he did not break out, he would fall into the sword formation. The leader made a prompt decision, and with the silver flying sword in his hand as the lead, he rushed in the direction of Earth Island. A series of explosions rang out, and after the silver-white flying sword light was destroyed, the leader finally broke out of the heavy encirclement before the sword formation had completely closed in. The leader spat out a mouthful of blood, and let out a hoarse howl. When Ouyang Weijian, who was fighting with Reverend Lu Xianyuan, heard the howl, he took a deep look at the Jinling cultivator in front of him, who was actually able to withstand his attacks for such a long time. He then turned around and retreated towards Earth Island. Reverend Lu Xianyuan let out a long breath, and did not chase after him. When Reverend Lu Xianyuan turned around to look at Yin Xianchu, he saw that Yin Xianchu had unknowingly retracted the white mist and returned to his human form. At this moment, he was stuffing a healing pill into the mouth of the already unconscious Ji Xianxian. On the other side, a stream of seawater flowed in reverse, and gradually formed a water person that looked exactly like Lu Ping. Reverend Lu Xianyuan was stunned, and said with some hesitation, "Sunflower water true body? Junior brother was actually able to reach such a realm?" Lu Ping shook his head helplessly and said, "Immortal elder, you must be joking. How could disciple be able to cultivate a divine power like the sunflower water true body? It's just a trick to escape." However, the comprehension of the sunflower water true body can indeed be used as a reference. Reverend Lu Xianyuan laughed bitterly and said, "You've already started to comprehend the sunflower water true body. How can we, the third-generation disciples who have cultivated for hundreds of years, endure this?" Lu Ping did not comment and walked straight to Ji Xianxian. With a sweep of his divine perception, he instantly understood most of the injuries in Ji Xuanchuan's body. Excessive consumption of divine perception? Lu Ping frowned and asked, "Not only is there consumption, but there's also a backlash. Did he use the divine perception secret technique divine power?" Yin Xuanchu's entire body was already drenched in blood, and his injuries were not much weaker than Ji Xuanchuan's. Right now, he was just forcefully holding on. When Lu Ping saw the guilt on Yin Xuanchu's face, he comforted him, "There's no danger to his life, and it won't negatively affect his future cultivation. He just needs to spend 3 to 5 years to recuperate. Perhaps, he might even be able to benefit from this disaster." Lu Ping's words clearly made Yin Xuanchu's expression relax, and then his body began to sway due to the large amount of blood loss. Seeing him like this, Lu Ping hurriedly stuffed a jade-like medicinal pill into his hand and said, "This is the jade body pill, and it's the best medicinal pill I have on me. Swallow and refine it as soon as possible. I'm afraid there'll be a tough battle in a while." Yin Xianchu nodded and directly swallowed the jade body pill. He sat cross-legged on the surface of the sea and began to refine the medicinal pill to recover from his injuries as soon as possible. Reverend Lu Xianyuan walked over and said, "I'm afraid we can't go to Universe Island anymore. I first went to Xianqi Island from Huangli Island, and then used the teleportation formation to Dikuan Island, and then to Universe Island. Originally, I wanted to receive you guys on the island, but the teleportation formation along the way has been heavily guarded. Even Huangli Island has many unfamiliar core forging cultivators. Right now, Ouyang Weijian and that cultivator from the Overflowing Seas gang are also fleeing in the direction of Universe Island. I'm afraid that cultivators will soon find out about Junior Marshal Brother Yin's whereabouts and rush over. When that time comes, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape even if we grow wings." At this moment, Yin Xianchu suddenly opened his eyes and said, "I can't let my brothers pay such a huge price for me anymore. I know that Uncle Master Xianchu should be nearby." Senior Marshal Brother Lu, take me to Uncle Master Xianshu. Yin Xianchu rarely spoke. This time, he said so much because he had already made up his mind not to escape anymore. Reverend Lu Xianyuan frowned and said, "Foolish. Everyone has paid such a huge price to escort you to this step with great difficulty. If you give up so easily, would the price that everyone paid for you be worth it? If you really can't escape, you can just dig a hole at the bottom of the sea and hide there for dozens of years. At most, your cultivation will be greatly slowed down. With your 500 to 600 years of lifespan, what's there to be afraid of?" Yin Xuanchu's body trembled. It was obvious that he was extremely agitated. Just as he was about to say something, he heard Lu Ping suddenly chuckle and say, "I have a good idea. Wait a moment." Lu Xianyuan did not know what Lu Ping was going to do, but he saw Lu Ping suddenly pull out a corpse from the sea. Or rather, this person still had his last breath. This person was the Overflowing Oceans Gang cultivator whose heart-core space was shattered by Yin Xianchu with the cooperation of Ji Xianxian. This person's heart was different from ordinary people, it grew on the right side. When Yin Xianchu pierced through this person's left chest, he realized that something was wrong. However, due to the urgency of the situation, Yin Xianchu did not have the time to pierce the right side of the heart. He could only use his quintessential essence to completely collapse the heart-core space and cripple his cultivation. After that, this person kept drifting on the sea but did not drown. It could be considered a miracle. Lu Xianyuan saw that Lu Ping stuffed a precious life fishing pill into this person's mouth. Just as he was about to say something, he saw that this person's eyelids were trembling. With the support of the life fishing pill, it was obvious that he was about to wake up. Lu Ping saw that this person would not die for a while. Without waiting for him to wake up, his palm that was covered in blue quintessential essence had already slapped the person's head. Reverend Lu Xuanyuan's eyes narrowed. He could not help but ask, "Soul-searching art?" Chapter 484. The inner sea of the North Sea was different from the outer sea and the deep sea demon territory. The deepest part of the sea was only a few hundred feet deep. It was a far cry from the outer sea, which was thousands of feet deep. Furthermore, the deep sea demon territory was rumored to have seas that were thousands or even tens of thousands of feet deep. Even the demons that lived in the sea could only explore the depths of those seas. Yin Xianchu looked at the pearl hovering above Lu Ping's head and asked uncertainly, "The Jade Sea Moonlight Pearl?" With the help of the Jade Sea Moonlight Pearl, the speed at which Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu moved through the sea was comparable to flying through the sky. Furthermore, because the deep sea blocked divine will, unless there was a late core forging cultivator or a Dharma manifestation cultivator like Laozu, no one would be able to discover the two hidden in the deep sea. As Lu Ping flew, he smiled and said, "I just happened to discover it in a cave. However, you should take this opportunity to suppress your injuries and recover the vital energy in your body. Although we have to catch them off guard this time, we can't be sure that the Overflowing Seas Sex cultivator's memory will not be wrong. It's better to be safe than sorry." Just when Lu Ping discovered that one of the Overflowing Seas Sex cultivators was still alive, Lu Ping had an idea. The Overflowing Seas sect was a chess piece that the Crystal Palace had placed in the North Sea. Although this was not a secret among the high-level cultivators of the North Sea, Yin Xianchu and the others did not know about it. However, Lu Ping had seen it with his own eyes and heard it with his own ears. Lu Ping was certain that the Overflowing Seas sect controlled the teleportation array that led to the East Sea. Based on the last time Lu Ping used the Overflowing Seas sect's teleportation array, the Overflowing Seas sect did not guard the teleportation array that led to the East Sea very strictly. However, it was well hidden. With this core forging cultivator's cultivation, it was definitely possible that he knew the location of the teleportation array in the Overflowing Seas sect. As expected, Lu Ping used the Overflowing Seas sect's teleportation array to find the location of the 3 secret teleportation arrays. However, their destination was the fallen mystic realm in the East Sea. Lu Ping made a prompt decision. He asked enlightened Master Lu Xianyuan to bring the heavily injured Ji Xianxian back to Tianling Mountain, while Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu headed to the overflowing ocean sect's secret teleportation array closest to this place. In order to prevent others from discovering them, Lu Ping cast out the water-repelling moon pearl and flew towards this secret location from the bottom of the sea. Yin Xianchu regulated his breathing for a moment. When he felt that his injuries were fine, he looked at Lu Ping with a hesitant expression. Although Lu Ping had been fleeing at the bottom of the sea, he also noticed Yin Xuanchu's dilemma. He couldn't help but smile and say, "Junior Marshal Brother Yin, do you have something to ask?" Yin Xianchu nodded when he saw that Lu Ping had spoken first. "Senior brother, did you already know of my identity and knew that my identity would be exposed?" Lu Ping hesitated for a moment and nodded. "I found out about your identity by accident. After senior uncle Xianin died, I sensed that you wouldn't let you off since he was so determined to kill you. The easiest way was to expose your identity as a descendant of a human and a demon and use the tens of thousands of years of enmity between the human and demon races to kill you. Therefore, I asked senior sister Hu to invite all of you to Huangli Island before I left for the demon race's territorial waters. If your identity was exposed, we could join forces and escort you away." Lu Ping thought for a moment and simply voiced out his doubts. "I just didn't expect that your identity would cause such a huge reaction from the sects of the Northern Sea. Not only was my sect pressured to kill you, it seemed that the entire Northern Sea's cultivation world was focused on you. You're only a mid-stage core forging cultivator. If you really are a descendant of a human and a demon and have some incredible secret on you, any random Laozu could have just taken you in. Why did they send so many cultivators to be witnesses and even provoke the joint attack of Ouyang Weijian and the overflowing sea gang? This is really strange and doesn't make any sense." Yin Xianchu was silent for a while before saying, "Senior brother Lu, do you know about the Dragon Ice Pearl?" Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Dragon Ice Pearl? The inheritance of the Dragon Ice Clan. It's the foundation that the Dragon Ice Clan relies on to become a top demon race. Yin Xianchu nodded. "That's right. I believe senior brother has some understanding of the Dragon Ice Clan. But does senior brother Lu know where the Dragon Ice Pearl comes from?" Lu Ping shook his head. "I don't know about that." Yin Xianchu said, "The inheritance of the Ice Dragon race for tens of thousands of years is sealed within the Ice Dragon Pearl, but only the descendants of the Ice Dragon race are able to open the seal of each level of the Ice Dragon Pearl according to the level of their cultivation. At the same time, the amount of inheritance that can be opened within the same level of cultivation is also determined according to the level of strength." Lu Ping already knew about this from Samling. Yin Xianchu continued to speak with fervor and assurance. "However, the creation of the Dragon Ice Pearl is not easy. Not only does it require a large amount of precious spiritual materials, but more importantly, only the clansmen of the Dragon Ice Clan who have reached the Dharma stage can start refining the inheritance of the Dragon Ice Pearl. Only the Dragon Ice Clan cultivators who have reached the Dharma stage can open all the seals in the Dragon Ice Pearl and know all the secrets of the Dragon Ice Clan's inheritance for tens of thousands of years." Lu Ping seemed to vaguely grasp what Yin Xianchu wanted to say, but it was still a little unclear. He asked, "Junior brother Yin, do you mean that the sects of the North Sea have come for the Dragon Ice Pearl?" Yin Xianchu nodded. "With my level of cultivation, if I have the Dragon Ice Pearl, I can only open the inheritance related to the middle and late stages of core forging. These inheritances are of no use to Dharma Laozu, but for core forging cultivators, if they obtain these inheritances, it will undoubtedly be an extremely rich foundation. The assistance to a cultivator's future achievements is absolutely limitless." Lu Ping heard the meaning in Yin Xuanchu's words and said, "Junior brother doesn't have the Dragon Ice Pearl, but the cultivators of the North Sea don't believe it. They would rather kill the wrong person than let him go." Yin Xianchu nodded and said confidently, "That should be the case. Moreover, the Dragon Ice Pearl itself is an extremely high-grade magic treasure. Even in the hands of cultivators who aren't from the Dragon Ice Clan, it can still display quite a bit of power. However, I once heard my father say that the Dragon Ice clan has long since declined. Back then, the last of the Dragon Ice clan, Laozu, only had 3 Dragon Ice pearls left, and they were all left for my mother. My mother inherited one for herself, and Aou also has one. The other one was given to Aou after my mother married my father. I've inherited my father's mantle since I was young, and I haven't learned any of the Dragon Ice clan's divine arts. My transformation into a half-demon was merely an instinctive reaction. Lu Ping nodded. Although he still had many questions in his heart, he didn't say anything. At this moment, the two of them had already arrived at a deserted island. It wasn't very big, and the island was littered with craggy rocks. There didn't seem to be any signs of human activity, but no one would have thought that the overflowing sea gang had set up a secret camp here. Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu found a hidden cave under a cliff on the deserted island. The two of them glanced at each other, and Lu Ping entered first based on the memories he'd obtained from the soul search. Yin Xianchu followed closely behind, keeping his guard up. The cave under the sea was slanted upwards. Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu cautiously walked upwards, scanning the area with their divine senses at the same time. For late blood condensation realm cultivators from the overflowing sea gang stood guard at the part of the cave that was exposed above the water. At this moment, the water at the cave's entrance suddenly splashed upwards. The cultivator guarding the cave's entrance froze, but he didn't notice anything amiss. Just as he was feeling puzzled, he felt a cold sensation at the base of his neck. He opened his mouth to cry out, but only a hoo-hoo sound came out. A stream of blood immediately spurted out from the base of his neck. Just as the cultivator was about to collapse, the other 3 cultivators from the overflowing sea gang also noticed something amiss. One of them, who seemed to be the leader of the 4, raised an object in his hand as if to warn them. But a blue light flashed in front of his eyes, and half of his arm was severed. The intense pain caused the cultivator to cry out in pain. However, before he could cry out, a muffled groan suddenly exploded in the ears of the remaining 3 cultivators. The cultivator whose arm was severed felt dizzy, and he actually forgot about the pain in his arm. However, when the blue light that severed his arm flashed again, this cultivator's consciousness instantly fell into a bottomless abyss. The other 2 cultivators were still in a daze from Lu Ping's previous divine sense attack. 2 more splashes of water appeared at the cave's entrance. 2 black daggers circled the necks of the 2 cultivators from the overflowing sea gang. The 2 cultivators immediately fell backwards, their bodies leaning against the stone wall as they slowly slid downwards. Their heads rolled on the ground. With a splash, Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu emerged from the cave. Looking at the 4 fallen cultivators, Lu Ping stretched out his hand and collected their storage pouches. Then, he carefully probed the cave with his divine sense. He discovered that there were only 8 late blood condensation cultivators guarding this secret teleportation array. The 4 cultivators who were guarding the cave entrance had already fallen at the hands of Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu. The remaining 4 were guarding a teleportation array within the cave. Seeing that it was indeed the information Lu Ping had obtained from the soul search, Lu Ping glanced at Yin Xianchu and finally relaxed. However, to prevent the 4 from destroying the teleportation array, Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu carefully snuck up to the 4 cultivators and killed them one by one. Lu Ping scanned the cave with his divine sense and discovered that there was no one alive. He then walked to the side of the teleportation array and inspected it. Not bad. This teleportation array indeed leads to the East Sea. According to the memories of that cultivator from the overflowing sea gang, the other side of the teleportation array should be in the East Sea's perished mystic realm. However, I don't know how many guards they have stationed there. After all, that cultivator from the overflowing sea gang hasn't returned to the East Sea for several years. Yin Xianchu said, "We've already come this far. There's no turning back." Lu Ping nodded and handed him a jade token. He smiled and said, "I've told you everything I know about the situation in the perished mystic realm. I'll have to trouble you to look after the faction I'm managing on Soundwave's island. Take this jade token. When the time comes, the people on Soundwaves Island will know what to do. Yin Xianchu accepted the jade token and saw Lu Ping taking out another item. Yin Xuanchu's eyes narrowed. A throbbing sensation from his bloodline caused his breathing to quicken. Chapter 485. When Yin Xianchu saw the fist-sized crystal pearl in Lu Ping's hand, he became extremely excited. Yin Xianchu looked at Lu Ping, then focused all his attention on the pearl in Lu Ping's hand. He asked with a trembling voice, could this be? Lu Ping handed the pearl to Yin Xianchu and said, "That's right, this is the Dragon Ice Pearl." Yin Xianchu accepted the pearl from Lu Ping with both hands. A white mist suddenly rose from his hands, and Yin Xuanchu's face immediately flushed with excitement. He murmured, "That's right, that's right. This is the Dragon Ice Pearl. This is the Dragon Ice Pearl." Lu Ping watched as the white mist from Yin Xuanchu's hands began to seep into the Dragon Ice Pearl. It was obvious that Yin Xianchu was refining this inheritance of the Dragon Ice clan. Lu Ping couldn't help but pat Yin Xuanchu's shoulder and said, "Now is not the time to activate the inheritance." Yin Xianchu suppressed the excitement in his heart with great difficulty. The blood of both the human and demon races flowed through his veins. In the past, he had only displayed the innate talent of his human race, yet he had already achieved so much. If he could obtain the inheritance of the Ice Ho race once more, his strength would undoubtedly increase greatly. However, he also knew that there was no time to refine the inheritance in his hands now. Hearing this, he smiled awkwardly at Lu Ping and began to inspect the transportation matrix with Lu Ping, preparing to activate it. Lu Ping tossed a few storage magic tools to Yin Xianchu and said, "These 4 storage magic tools were obtained from the 4 core forging cultivators of the Overturned Seas gang that I killed outside of Universe Island. I've taken all of the spiritual herbs and high-grade spirit stones inside. Master Immortal Lu doesn't want any of the remaining items, so you can keep them all." Although the Eastern Sea is rich and populous, the expenditure of various cultivation resources is also high. There are no sects in the Eastern Sea to back you up. I'll be thankful that my Hearing Surf Manor can be self-sufficient and have a slight surplus. I'm afraid that it won't be of much help to you. When the time comes, it'll all be up to you. Yin Xianchu did not act pretentiously and put away the 4 storage Dharma artifacts. Lu Ping placed a few high-grade spirit stones and a dozen mid-grade spirit stones into the transmission array. Before Lu Ping could activate the transmission array under Yin Xuanchu's feet lit up. Lu Ping's face sank and he quickly kept the corpses of the 4 overturned ocean sect cultivators around the teleportation array. Yin Xianchu retreated behind a large boulder behind the teleportation array and was instantly engulfed by the boulder's shadow. After keeping the corpse, Lu Ping turned around and ran out of the cave where the teleportation portal was located. White light shone brightly from the teleportation array. When the light dissipated, a middle-aged cultivator in his 40s with a sinister face appeared on the teleportation array. The middle-aged cultivator looked around the teleportation array and said, "Huh? Why isn't there anyone guarding it? The Overturned Oceans sect has been in the North Sea for too long and has slacked off to this extent. No wonder Marshal Uncle Yuan Guang has some complaints about the Overturned Oceans sect and the Chiu family." Just as the middle-aged cultivator finished speaking, he suddenly saw the spirit stones that Lu Ping had just embedded into the teleportation array. The middle-aged cultivator's face changed and he raised his hand to summon his defensive Dharma treasure. However, a cold killing intent had already attacked him from behind. The middle-aged cultivator was not afraid in the face of danger. He dashed forward and at the same time, 5 layers of protective chi expanded from the surface of his body. With a tearing sound, the middle-aged cultivator's protective chi was instantly torn apart. At that moment, a 9-storied crystal pagoda with 5 layers lit up had already risen above the cultivator's head. A curtain of light hung down and blocked a black dagger in front of the cultivator. When the cultivator saw that there was only one dagger, his expression immediately changed and he quickly flipped to the side. However, it was already too late. The cultivator felt a chill on his left shoulder and a half-foot-long wound appeared on his shoulder. Before the blood could seep out, it was frozen into scarlet ice by a layer of cold qi. The cultivator turned around and looked at Yin Xianchu sternly. Someone from the Liao family? I didn't expect you to be so well informed. I, Peng Xiuan, had just found out about the Liao family's background in the Middle Lands, and now you want to ambush and kill me. Unfortunately, what use is there in killing me? I've already reported the Liao family's background to the palace. I've only come to inform Marshal Uncle Yuan Guang. Yin Xianchu held the 2 daggers in his hands and listened expressionlessly to the cultivator's self-speculations. The cultivator swept his divine sense and his face immediately lit up. He sneered. You want to keep me here with an injured body? It seems that the cultivators of the Overflowing Oceans gang have finally become smart for once. They left behind core forging cultivators to guard this cave. If they die, then so be it. In the end, they still gave me a chance to live. Yin Xianchu waved the 2 daggers. One of the daggers suddenly shot out dozens of black shadows, covering the various places where the cultivator could dodge. The other dagger flashed and disappeared without a trace among the dozens of black shadows. Your Liao family has guts to dare to kill a cultivator from the Crystal Palace. Even the major sects and clans of the Middle Lands wouldn't dare to do this. Your Liao family of the North Sea can wait to be exterminated. Even your family in the Middle Lands won't be able to save you. The cultivator retreated to block Yin Xuanchu's surprise attack as he spoke fiercely. Noisy. Yin Xianchu finally said his first sentence. At the same time, the daggers hidden among the countless black shadows suddenly stabbed out from an unexpected direction. The cultivator's crystal-glazed pagoda slashed empty air. Even though 4 floors of the crystal-glazed pagoda had been lit up, the 2 daggers still managed to pierce through the protective barrier of light. However, after piercing through the barrier of light, the 2 daggers were like an arrow at the end of its flight and had no choice but to retreat. However, this still shocked the cultivator. Taking advantage of the fact that Yin Xuanchu's daggers were ineffective, he turned around and fled out of the cave. As he fled, he turned his head to look at Yin Xianchu, only to find that Yin Xianchu didn't give chase. Instead, Yin Xianchu revealed a mocking smile. Not good. The cultivator quickly realized that he had overlooked something. However, it was already too late. A golden sword beam suddenly shot out to collide with the fleeing cultivator. The crystal-glazed pagoda's protective barrier of light had just been pierced by Yin Xianchu. Thus, it did not have much defensive magic power left. Not to mention, the 5 layers of protective astral energy were no match for Lu Ping's divine swordsmanship. Before the cultivator could even cry out, Lu Ping had cleaved him into 2. Lu Ping sighed and said, this person's magic treasures are the crystal jian and the crystal-glazed pagoda. The Crystal Palace's standard magic treasure has only been upgraded. However, the crystal-glazed pagoda is related to a great divine ability of the Crystal Palace. Only the elite disciples of the Crystal Palace can obtain its inheritance. However, this person's strength is so mediocre. How did he obtain the crystal-glazed pagoda? Yin Xianchu shook his head and said, I've only seen the crystal-glazed pagoda once when a cultivator from the Eastern Sea visited our sect. Moreover, that cultivator from the Crystal Palace was beaten to a pulp by you. However, this person seems to think that we are from the Liao family of the Northern Sea. From his tone, it seems that he has discovered some secret of the Liao family. Lu Ping chuckled and said, this person is here to see Yuan Guang Laozu of the Crystal Palace. It seems that the Liao family is not simple. It's a pity that I couldn't hold back just now. Otherwise, I would have captured him alive and searched his soul. Lu Ping thought to himself, not only does the Liao family have rare pills like the longevity pill and the bone-forging pill, they even have the heart-dissolving pill and the heart-forging pill that can cause a frenzy in the Northern Sea's cultivation world. They also seem to have a deep understanding of the Middle Earth. This is clearly not something an ordinary Northern Sea family can have. Lu Ping casually put away the cultivator's storage magic treasure and burned the corpse with a fire. Then, he looked up at Yin Xianchu and said, "So, do you still want to use this teleportation array to go to the Eastern Sea?" Yin Xianchu nodded and didn't say anything. Lu Ping smiled and said, "That's good. I've told you about the Eastern Sea. Help me look after my listening wave prefecture. Once we reach the Eastern Sea, it's up to you." The white light of the teleportation array flickered again. As Yin Xianchu was engulfed by the white light, his figure also disappeared from the teleportation array. Lu Ping wasn't in a hurry to leave. Every now and then, he would use a dozen or so mid-grade spirit stones to check the teleportation array. After doing this a few times, Lu Ping's face turned a little ugly. After Lu Ping placed the spirit stones on the teleportation array again, a rumbling sound suddenly came from the teleportation array. Lu Ping's face lit up and he checked the teleportation array again. Sure enough, he found that he had lost contact with the other teleportation array at his destination. Clearly, after Yin Xianchu teleported over, he had taken control of the situation there and destroyed the teleportation array as soon as possible. Relieved, Lu Ping opened his palm and several sword chis shot out from his palm. In one fell swoop, the teleportation array on the ground was shattered into hundreds of pieces. Then, he walked out of the cave. Just as Lu Ping walked to the entrance of the seawater cave, Lu Ping was shocked. He pulled De Bao out of the golden house and pressed his head down into the ground without saying anything. A soft sound of water came from the entrance of the seawater cave. Two mysterious core forging cultivators appeared at the entrance of the cave almost soundlessly. Seeing that there weren't any cultivators from the overflowing seas gang guarding the surroundings, the two of them immediately became vigilant. They used their divine senses to scan the cave. Although their expressions changed, they didn't find anything. The two of them hesitated for a moment. Then, one of them reached out and pointed at the water surface of the cave. Then, the water surface rippled and two more people walked in. One of them looked burly and mighty. He seemed to be the leader of the four. He asked in a deep voice, "What's wrong?" The cultivator who pointed at the water surface replied in a low voice, "Something doesn't seem right. It seems like someone has already been here. The cultivators from the overflowing seas gang are nowhere to be seen, and the teleportation array has been destroyed. Could it be that the overflowing seas gang has discovered our movements and abandoned this teleportation array?" The leading cultivator shook his head and said, "It's not impossible. It's just that this time, not only did Peng Shiyuan find some information about the Liao family in the Central Plains, he also came to the North Sea with an item that our Liao family must obtain. No matter what, we must find him alive or dead. Let's go, we'll go to the next teleportation array of the overflowing seas gang." After the four of them left, the narrow ground of the cave suddenly exploded into pieces of stone. Lu Ping grabbed De Bao, who had exhausted all of his transcendence energy, and jumped out from under the stone floor. He spat out a mouthful of blood and said in a low voice, "Liao Hu, it's actually him." Chapter 486. De Bao could use the earth escape technique, but it would be difficult for him to use the stone escape technique. Fortunately, De Bao was at the 8th layer of the blood condensation realm and was about to advance to the peak of the blood condensation realm. Even though he was lazy, he still managed to help Lu Ping survive this ordeal. The Yuan Burst Pill was the scarlet pill that Lu Ping consumed after he was injured by enlightened Master Xian Shu. It was a pill that could stimulate a cultivator's potential. It could quickly restore the cultivator's true yuan. However, the price was that the poison contained in the pill would spread throughout the cultivator's body, causing the cultivator's body to be completely isolated from the outside world's spiritual qi for a year. This also meant that for the next year, the cultivator could only cultivate by consuming pills. As for spiritual qi, spirit veins, spirit stones, and other things related to cultivation, they could not be used. After a year, even if the pill lost its effect of sealing off the spiritual qi, the remaining poison would still affect the cultivator's cultivation. The cultivator would only be able to cultivate normally after 3 to 5 years, when the poison in the body was completely eliminated. This was, in fact, a poison pellet that Lu Ping had concocted using the dark prison poison fire in case of emergency. Fortunately, the first type of protective energy that Lu Ping had refined was the myriad poison meteorite shield, which was also known as the mother of all poisons. This type of protective energy was extremely effective against any kind of poison. Lu Ping was confident that he could break through the sealing effect of this pill within half a year and fully recover within a year. However, this was only under ideal circumstances. In reality, Lu Ping was already severely injured before he consumed the Yuan burst pill. After that, he fought a series of battles and flew continuously for a long distance, which further worsened his injuries. In the end, he was trapped by De Bao's half-baked escape technique and had to conceal his aura to avoid being discovered by the Liao family. In the end, Lu Ping could no longer suppress the injuries in his body. "I'm afraid I won't be able to recover for at least 2 to 3 years. Lu Ping threw De Bao into the house of gold. Then, he found a healing pill that was refined using the spirit water pill refining technique from his storage ring. He threw it into his mouth and refined it, temporarily suppressing the injuries in his body. Although the effects of the healing medicinal pellets concocted using the spirit water alchemy technique were much better than ordinary healing medicinal pellets, in addition to the extremely high difficulty of concocting them, the spirit water alchemy technique could only concoct one medicinal pellet at a time. In other words, even if one could successfully concoct a cauldron of spirit herbs using the spirit water alchemy technique, there would only be one medicinal pellet. Therefore, even someone as wealthy as Lu Ping had only concocted 6 or 7 of these medicinal pellets to protect himself. He didn't expect that after a series of battles, other than the ones he used and the ones used by Ji Xianxian and Yin Xianchu, Lu Ping would only have one left. After cautiously exiting the water cave, Lu Ping's divine sense had been vigilantly paying attention to the movements in the surroundings. He was afraid that the Liao clan would set up an ambush nearby. With Lu Ping's current state, he no longer had the ability to kill cultivators of the same level as him like weeds. Even Lu Ping himself could become a fish on the chopping block at any time. However, what made Lu Ping rejoice was that his cautiousness was ultimately useless. The cultivators of the Liao clan seemed to really care about the cultivator from the eastern sea called Peng Xiuan and didn't leave an ambush nearby. Lu Ping's heart stirred. He remembered that when Yin Xianchu took the lead to attack the cultivator from the Crystal Palace who came through the teleportation array, that person said his name was Peng Xiuan. He also thought that Lu Ping and the others were from the Liao clan. In other words, the thing that the Liao clan wanted was now in Lu Ping's possession. Lu Ping placed the waterproof moon pearl on top of his head and dived into the sea, heading in the direction of Earth Island. There was something strange about this matter. Lu Ping needed to return to Jinling as soon as possible. Although many of his companions, including himself, would be severely punished by the sect because of Yin Xuanchu's matter, Lu Ping didn't care. This was because Spiritual Master Lu Xianyuan had received a hint from Spiritual Master Guo Xianshan, who had informed the sect in advance, and Spiritual Master Xianshu had intentionally or unintentionally held back. Lu Ping knew that no matter what the sect's considerations were, they were not willing to put Yin Xianchu to death. Thus, those who participated in the escort of Yin Xianchu this time were all personal disciples of the third-generation disciples with the support of their teachers. In addition, the law did not punish too many people. Lu Ping believed that the sect's punishment would be nothing more than a light punishment. At the very least, they would make everyone suffer a great loss in name. Lu Ping still felt a little regretful in his heart. This was because after Lu Ping had searched the soul of the middle-stage core forging realm cultivator from the Overflowing Seas sect, he had discovered a few secret treasure vaults of the Overflowing Seas sect in the Northern Sea. These vaults contained some of the cultivation resources that the Overflowing Seas sect had obtained in the Northern Sea for several hundred years. Originally, Lu Ping wanted to take advantage of the situation and make a profit. However, it was a pity that the injuries on Lu Ping's body had relapsed. De Bao, who had always been the vanguard of Lu Ping's robbing and searching for other people's treasures, had been severely injured due to the exhaustion of his stone escape technique. Helpless, Lu Ping could only return to Earth Island first. Fortunately, there were no more twists and turns along the way. However, when Lu Ping returned to Earth Island's Snow Mist Palace, what he saw was not the scene of Tian Shui Laozu pointing at his nose and scolding him as he imagined. Instead, there was an old man sitting at the head of the palace. However, the aura he emitted was extremely vigorous and heavy. Lu Ping was stunned for a moment. He saw the expressionless Taoist Xian Shu, the gloomy Yuan Zhan, the bitter smile on Taoist Lu Xuanyuan's face, and Chen Lian, Zhong Jian, Ma Yu, and the others, who had their heads lowered and did not dare to speak. Even the heavily injured Ji Xianxian was barely able to stand. He appeared to be swaying, as if he could collapse at any time. Seeing that Lu Ping walked into Snow Mist Palace unscathed, a strange look appeared in Taoist Xian Shu's eyes. Yuan Zhan's expression changed, but he immediately calmed down. On the other side, Ji Xianxian and the others all revealed looks of joy. The previously tense atmosphere immediately relaxed. Even Taoist Lu Xianyuan, who appeared to be unfazed, heaved a sigh of relief. However, Lu Ping's mind was racing. Lu Ping had never seen the old man sitting at the head of the palace before. Judging from the situation where Taoist Xian Shu could only stand in front of him, this old man was obviously a Dharma adept of his sect, Laozu. Up until now, the only Dharma adept that Lu Ping had not seen before was Tiankang Laozu, who had always been recuperating and only revealed his mid-Dharma adept cultivation at the last moment, causing Xianling's sect to return in defeat. At this thought, Lu Ping hurriedly bowed and said, "Disciple Lu Xianping pays his respects to Uncle Master Tiankang." The old man was Jinling's fourth mid-Dharma adept, Tiankang Laozu. Laozu looked at Lu Ping and said, "You've sent him away." Lu Ping was stunned, but he kept his mouth shut and did not answer. He did not want to deny it, but he did not want to lie in front of the elders of the sect either, so he could only wait in silence. Luckily, Patriarch Heavenly Peace didn't linger on this matter and just said directly, "You guys sure have guts to publicly defy the sect's orders and even fight with the sect's law enforcement cultivators. You guys are truly lawless. Do you still have any respect for the sect?" Lu Ping and the others stood in silence. Lu Ping carefully glanced at Tiankang Laozu, but he could not see Tiankang Laozu's expression clearly. He could only vaguely feel that Tiankang Laozu was staring at him. "Shi Lingling, Zhong Jian, Ma Yu, the three of you will make a trip to Frost Island. Ask the Mystic Flame to seal your cultivation. I'll give you 5 years. You have to obediently go to the mines and dig for spirit stones like normal blood condensation and blood refining disciples." This meant that the sect's punishment was coming. Shi Lingling and Ma Yu's expressions turned bitter when they heard this, but Zhong Jian's expression was even more bitter. The two female practitioners' expressions were bitter because digging for spirit stones was already an extremely difficult task for them since their inner yuan had been sealed. Moreover, Frost Island was extremely cold. Without inner yuan to ward off the cold, how could the two delicate girls endure it? As for Zhong Jian, he was the only male cultivator among the three. With these two girls around, he definitely wouldn't just be doing his part of the hard work. "Chen Lian, Du Feng, Xian Tao, the three of you were previously punished by martial nephew Xian Shu to be woodcutters at Heaven's Spirit Mountain. 3 years is too short, so it'll be changed to 5 years. Every day, 3 loads of firewood will be changed to 5 loads. Seal your inner yuan and reflect on your actions." After Tiankang Laozu finished talking about the 6 of them, he turned to look at Ji Xianxian, who was on the verge of collapsing, and said, "There's also Zhang Xuancheng. He actually removed the Heaven Spirit Mountain's teleportation formation's positioning compass. How thoughtful of him. Since he's working at True Spirit Side Courtyard, let him be a sweeping servant in the side courtyard. 5 years later, if the side courtyard is cleaned up by him, then he'll go and be the immortal elder of the side courtyard. If he can't clean it up, then we'll talk about it when it's time to clean it up." Although these people's punishments weren't light, they weren't too heavy either. It was just that the 7 of them had their cultivation sealed, so it would be much more difficult for them to do things. Furthermore, these 5 years would more or less affect their cultivation. At this moment, everyone in the palace turned their gazes towards Ji Xianxian, Lu Ping, and Lu Xianyuan. Although enlightened Master Lu Xianyuan was suspected of leaking information, he didn't participate in escorting Yin Xianchu. Originally, he was supposed to go to Huanyu Island to receive the others, but he ended up fighting with Ouyang Weijian on the sea outside the island. Tiankang Laozu pondered for a moment and said, Lu Xianyuan and Ji Xianxian, the 2 of you have caused too much of a commotion this time. Go and find Marshal Nephew Chao. As soon as Tiankang Laozu finished speaking, not only Lu Ping, but even perfected Master Xian Shu was in disbelief. This punishment wasn't too light, but it was unexpectedly severe. There was only one perfected Master Chao in Jinling, and Lu Ping knew him back then. He was the martial Uncle Chao that he met in the 7-star grotto heaven back then. Later on, he even taught Lu Ping the soul-searching technique. After that, Lu Ping was specially allowed by the sect to participate in some of the matters of the sect's upper echelons by Laozu. Only then did he have some understanding of this martial Uncle Chao. To put it bluntly, this martial Uncle Chao was a knife that Jinling hid in the dark. He controlled a hidden force in Jinling and helped Jinling deal with some things that couldn't be seen in the light. And this hidden force that he controlled had a name that Lu Ping was extremely familiar with. It was the Condemned Cultivator. Ji Xianxian was still a little confused, but perfected Master Lu Xianyuan seemed to have some understanding of perfected Master Chao. He was stunned for a moment before he respectfully responded. As for you. Lu Ping couldn't help but raise his head again. Everyone's gazes were on him. Lu Ping could even distinguish a trace of schadenfreude from among them. It belonged to the serious-looking Yuan Zhan. Make a trip to the Pill Pavilion. The earth fire there has been very unstable recently. Go to the earth fire's mouth to suppress it for 5 years to prevent the earth fire from wreaking havoc and affecting the sect's supply of pills. Chapter 487. The earth fire vein of Dan Pavilion was the result of several generations of Jinling's senior cultivators' cultivation and strengthening. For thousands of years, the fire vein of Dan Pavilion had already accumulated to an extremely saturated state. However, all of this had become somewhat out of control after Jinling had his own magic treasure-level pill furnace. In the past, Tianjiang and Tianlu Laozu worked together to upgrade the Na Chuan cauldron to a magic treasure. However, whether it was Dan Pavilion or Refining Hall, the fire veins managed by the two were not enough to upgrade the Na Chuan cauldron to a magic treasure. Moreover, because one of the 2 fire veins was explosive and the other was relatively mild, they were incompatible and could not be fused to refine the Na Chuan cauldron. In desperation, the 2 Laozu had to use the 2 uncultivated fire veins that senior Jinling Laozu had previously discovered in the North Sea. Through a secret technique, the 2 fire veins were activated in advance and merged with the fire vein of Dan Pavilion to upgrade the Na Chuan cauldron. As a result, because the 2 immature fire veins were hastily activated and merged with the fire vein of the Pill Pavilion, the original fire vein of the Pill Pavilion lost control and became violent. Because of the instability of the fire vein, the various alchemy rooms in the Pill Pavilion suffered a lot of damage because of the difficulty in controlling the fire. Of course, all of this was insignificant compared to the magic treasure-level pill furnace that Jinling had obtained. However, because of the uncertain strength of the fire vein in ordinary alchemy rooms, some low-level alchemists suffered unspeakably. It would take at least 5 years to control and cultivate the fire vein again. In desperation, Tianlu Laozu organized the alchemists with Jinling's core forging stage cultivation base to take turns to suppress and control the strength of the fire vein, temporarily stabilizing the fire vein of Dan Pavilion. At the same time, Daoist Xian Chen and the cultivators of his sect who were proficient in array formations were able to regain control of the strong fire vein as soon as possible. However, because the strength of these two immature fire veins was uncertain, Taoist Xian Chen needed to spend more time and energy to control the strength of the fire vein at a stable level. When Lu Ping once again saw Taoist Master Xian Dian, who was in charge of the daily affairs of the Pill Pavilion, Lu Ping looked at Taoist Master Xian Dian's strange gaze and was somewhat at a loss as to what to do. Lu Ping finally followed Reverend Xian Dian to the vicinity of the earth fire vent. Reverend Xian Dian finally opened his mouth and asked, "I heard that you fought with senior martial brother Xian Shu." Lu Ping was stunned for a moment before he said, "How could disciple be Xian Shu Shu's opponent? I only asked Xian Shu Shu to teach me a little." Taoist Xian Dian nodded and solemnly said, "I heard that you killed a core forging late-stage demon cultivator. Originally, many people in the sect didn't believe it, but I'm afraid they have no choice but to believe it now." Lu Ping blushed with shame and quickly said, "How could disciple be Xian Shu Shu's opponent? It was just that Xian Shu Shu gave me 2 pointers, that's all. If it wasn't for Xian Shu Shu holding back, disciple would have already been beaten to a pulp." Taoist Xian Dian obviously wouldn't listen to Lu Ping's modest words. He walked to a blazing hot underground entrance and said, "This is the earth fire vent, which is also the main vein of the Pill Pavilion's fire vein. In the next 5 years, your task is to completely suppress the raging earth fire at the earth fire vent, and steadily transport it to the various alchemy rooms." This was the main hub of the Pill Pavilion's fire vein. Lu Ping walked to the underground entrance and saw a raging stream of earth fire, which was being controlled by 2 core forging stage cultivators with the help of an old formation, divided into 36 fire veins of different sizes. Among them, the 3 fire veins with the strongest firepower almost accounted for a quarter of the entire fire vein. These 3 fire veins were originally going to be transported to the only 3 A-grade alchemy rooms in the Pill Pavilion. This was because before Jinling obtained the Na Chuan Cauldron, Jinling only had 3 top-grade alchemy furnaces. But now, one of the Lin Chuan Cauldrons was in the hands of Lu Ping. Therefore, this alchemy room was left idle. Later, several alchemy grandmasters of Jinling would often bring their own high-grade alchemy furnaces to this alchemy room. They would try to use the higher-grade earth fire to refine some high-grade dawn. Another quarter of the fire vein was divided into 6 parts and transported to 6 B-grade alchemy rooms. Originally, 6 high-grade alchemy furnaces were placed in these rooms. However, these 6 alchemy furnaces were each controlled by the 5 alchemy grandmasters of the Pill Pavilion. The remaining one was often used by some core forging stage alchemy masters to hone their alchemy skills. It was said that Tao Xian Fang, the disciple of Taoist Xian Jing, was about to become the 6th alchemy grandmaster of the Pill Pavilion. Therefore, Tianlu Laozu specially allowed him to temporarily control the remaining high-grade alchemy furnace to hone his alchemy skills. The remaining half of the fire vein was transported to 9 C-grade alchemy rooms and 18 D-grade alchemy rooms. Seeing Lu Ping come down, the 2 core forging stage cultivators who were suppressing the fire vein relaxed. Then, with some doubt, they asked, "How come it's only you?" Lu Ping stared blankly for a moment, then said, "Yes, it's only me." One of the cultivators who was talking with Lu Ping had slightly neglected his control of the fire vein. When Lu Ping saw that the fire vein that was being transported to the B-grade alchemy room suddenly swelled, the cultivator was startled and quickly suppressed it. Then, he heard a roar from a distant alchemy room. Then, Taoist Xian Yan's face darkened. Seeing Lu Ping here, Taoist Xian Yan's complexion changed. Then, he looked at the 2 cultivators who were suppressing the fire vein apologetically, coldly snorted, then turned around and left. The cultivator who spoke before looked at Lu Ping with embarrassment and said, "Senior brother Xian Yan has recently been pondering over a late core forging stage pill. This time, I'm afraid all his efforts have been wasted." Lu Ping looked at Taoist Xian Dian next to him, then said to the cultivator, "This is not your fault. As an alchemy grandmaster, even if there was a large fluctuation in the fire vein, it shouldn't have affected him." Reverend Xian Dian, who was standing to the side, opened his mouth to say something but smiled bitterly instead of saying anything. In truth, as an alchemy grandmaster, he was most adept at controlling fire. Reverend Xian Yan's failure to control the fire well had resulted in the pill being wasted, which was a dishonorable thing to do. Originally, when Taoist Xian Yan came to the earth fire vent, he wanted to vent his anger. After all, a late core forging stage pill was extremely precious, but after seeing Lu Ping, he forcibly suppressed his anger in his heart. The two alchemists who were suppressing the fire vein might not understand, but Taoist Xian Yan couldn't let Lu Ping see a joke. Not to mention that Lu Ping was his martial nephew, a martial nephew that he didn't like very much. However, this talented martial nephew was also an alchemy grandmaster, and even more brilliant than him. Under the surprised gazes of the two core forging realm cultivators, Lu Ping really took over their positions. He sat cross-legged on the fire-splitting array disc in the center of the earth fire vent and began to control and manipulate the fire vein. His skillful fire-controlling skills left the two alchemists in awe. Suppressing the earth fire vein was an extremely boring task, not to mention that Lu Ping had to suppress it for a full 5 years. After suppressing the extremely unstable earth fire, Lu Ping also had to constantly sort out and divide the fire vein. 5 years of doing the same thing over and over again was undoubtedly an extremely boring task. For Lu Ping, with his control of fire and his cultivation that far exceeded the same level cultivators, suppressing the earth fire was not a difficult task. However, Lu Ping, as a cultivator who cultivated water attribute secret arts, was extremely uncomfortable in this place that was surrounded by flames. Lu Ping could clearly feel that his cultivation speed had dropped too much here. Fortunately, Lu Ping couldn't cultivate now. He first had to recuperate from his injuries, and then slowly expel the toxins that permeated his body because of the explosive yuan pill. Otherwise, even with the support of the pill, his cultivation would become twice the effort with half the result. To Lu Ping's surprise, after only 3 months, Lu Ping had broken through the state where the outside world's spiritual energy was isolated from Lu Ping's body because of the explosive yuan pill's toxins. Lu Ping discovered that when he was circulating his cultivation method to expel the toxins, the myriad meteoric poison energy shield was also slowly absorbing the toxins in his body. Lu Ping suddenly realized that even if he didn't purposely expel the toxins, under the absorption of the myriad meteoric poison energy shield, Lu Ping's body would gradually return to its original state. After a year, Lu Ping finally completely expelled the toxins in his body. The internal injuries from the fierce battle with Taoist Xian Shu were also completely healed. However, what made Lu Ping feel regretful was that the earth fire vent was really not an ideal place for Lu Ping to cultivate. Fortunately, Lu Ping immediately discovered another benefit of cultivating here, which was that he could continuously refine the true essence in his body while suppressing the earth fire, causing Lu Ping's true essence to become purer and thicker. Originally, Lu Ping walked the path of pure true essence. He didn't even hesitate to slow down the speed of his cultivation. However, after going through the refinement of the earth fire vent, Lu Ping discovered that his true essence could become even purer. Under the gaze of divine will, drops of condensed and concentrated true essence were absorbed by the golden core in the core space along with the circulation of the blood vessels. The 5 four-legged strange dragons on the surface of the golden core suddenly became more active. After they played on the surface of the golden core for a while, the 5 strange dragons looked up to the sky and made a long roar. A faint pressure was emitted from the underground fire vent until it expanded to a radius of nearly 10 miles before it slowly dissipated. This was the limit that Lu Ping's divine will could cover. In the pill room at the back of the mountain of the pill pavilion, Tianlu Laozu, who was refining a furnace of Dharma pills, trembled and almost ruined the furnace of pills in the Na Chuan cauldron. Tianlu Laozu suddenly opened his eyes and said in a low voice, "Bloodline pressure. This isn't something that can only be found in top-grade demon beasts and true avatars. Could it be that a cultivator on Tianling Mountain is controlling a top-grade demon beast, or did a bored ancestral patriarch reveal his avatar?" After thinking for a while, Tianlu Laozu shook his head seriously and said, "No, the few Laozu on Tianling Mountain don't have this kind of bloodline pressure. Then someone must have caught a top-level demon as a pet." A top-level demon is a big problem. Could it be Lu Xuanping's Luan? Although that Luan is not a top-level demon, the fire Luan, it is a Luan with dual attributes of wind and fire. It can be seen that it also has the blood of the fire Luan. The fire Luan is one of the top 3 races of the East Sea Demon clan. I hope it won't bring trouble to the sect. At this time, Lu Ping was at the underground fire vent. He took out the belongings of the Crystal Palace cultivator, Peng Shiyuan, who was killed at the secret transmission array of the Covered Seas gang. At that time, he heard the Liao family cultivator say that Peng Shiyuan had an important item on him. Chapter 488. Lu Ping didn't expect that immortal Peng Shiyuan of the Crystal Palace was actually an alchemy master. No wonder immortal Peng Shiyuan was so easily ambushed and killed by Lu Ping and Yin Xianchu in the transmission array. How rich was the collection of an alchemy master? What's more, this alchemy master was from the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping was overjoyed. He took hundreds of thousand-year-old spiritual herbs and 20 to 33,000-year-old spiritual herbs from the storage device and put them into his own storage ring. Then, there were nearly 20 jade bottles filled with various elixirs. Lu Ping opened them one by one. There were at least 5 or 6 elixirs that Lu Ping had never heard of. The others that Lu Ping knew were elixirs that were suitable for cultivators in the middle stage of the core forging realm. Lu Ping took advantage of them. After a cultivator advanced to the core forging realm, they could only take 3 bottles of each type of elixir because of their body's resistance to the elixirs. Then, they would have to change to other elixirs for cultivation. Therefore, being able to obtain more elixirs of the same level was greatly beneficial for Lu Ping to continue to use elixirs to assist in his cultivation. In addition to these, what Lu Ping valued were the more than 10 kinds of elixir recipe jade slips in Peng Shiyuan's storage device. Although Peng Shiyuan's storage device did not contain his inheritance, there were actually 4 or 5 elixir recipes recorded in these elixir recipe jade slips that Lu Ping had yet to master. This could be regarded as an accumulation and foundation for both Lu Ping and Jinling. What's more, these elixir recipes were obviously from a sect like the Crystal Palace, so the quality of the elixir itself was naturally guaranteed. Of course, what delighted Lu Ping the most was that Peng Shiyuan's alchemy furnace was also carried with him, and it was an upper-grade alchemy furnace. This made Lu Ping sigh at the wealth of the Crystal Palace. Although the Jinling Mountain's alchemy grandmasters each controlled a high-grade pill furnace, they were not allowed to bring it out of Tianling Mountain. If the Grandmaster went out, the pill furnace would be placed in the pill pavilion's second-grade alchemy room. They were afraid that if the Grandmaster died outside, the pill furnace would fall into someone else's hands. However, the Crystal Palace obviously didn't have such scruples. Apart from being rich and overbearing, the other reason was that they were sure that the practitioners they sent would never dare to attack the practitioners of the Crystal Palace. Even the upper-grade alchemy furnace in Lu Ping's hands was no exception. However, Lu Ping had a better top-grade alchemy furnace, and it was obtained by Lu Ping himself. Therefore, the sect's rule couldn't be restricted to Lu Ping. However, a year ago, Tao Xianfang, Sage Xian Jing's disciple, finally succeeded in refining pills for the core forging stage and became the 6th alchemy grandmaster of Jinling. Therefore, the last upper-grade alchemy furnace in Jinling was also under his control. However, as the number of core forging stage cultivators in Jinling increased over the years, the only 6 alchemy grandmasters couldn't guarantee the supply of pills for all the cultivators. This caused the other 5 upper-grade alchemy furnaces to be in use, except for the one Lu Ping was in charge of. As a result, only Lu Ping's upper-grade alchemy furnace was left in the second-grade alchemy room for a long time. It became the only place for many alchemy masters in Jinling to practice their alchemy skills in order to advance to alchemy grandmaster. This made Tianlu Laozu quite annoyed. If this continued, Jinling's cultivation of alchemy masters would undoubtedly stagnate. These things boiled down to one reason: Jinling's foundation was insufficient. It wasn't that Tianlu Laozu didn't think of refining one or two upper-grade alchemy furnaces to alleviate the current situation. However, even if it was an upper-grade alchemy furnace, for Jinling, it wasn't something that could be easily refined. Even if Jinling prepared the spiritual materials for the alchemy furnace, the refining pavilion would still need to spend several years or even longer to carefully polish it before it could be successfully refined. The appearance of this upper-grade alchemy furnace on Peng Shiyuan's body could temporarily alleviate the conflict between alchemy and cultivation of alchemy masters in Jinling. After packing up all the other items, there were only 2 jade slips left in Lu Ping's hands. These 2 things on Peng Shiyuan's body made Lu Ping very happy. However, Lu Ping couldn't determine which important item Peng Shiyuan was referring to. Lu Ping first stuck one of the jade slips on his forehead. This way, he could use his divine sense to examine the contents of the jade slips more carefully. The numerous and complicated restrictions, the profound and abstruse runes, a familiar feeling immediately made Lu Ping pleasantly surprised. The only difference was that Lu Ping no longer had a splitting headache like when he first saw these runes because of the lack of divine sense. In the end, he couldn't peek at the full picture of what was recorded in the jade slips. This jade slips recorded a treasured restriction. Moreover, it was the most precious of all treasured restrictions in the cultivation world, the treasured alchemy furnace restriction. How many treasured alchemy furnace restrictions were there in the entire North Sea? Just by looking at the only 2 magic treasure-level alchemy furnaces in the entire North Sea, as well as the dozens of top-grade alchemy furnaces controlled by the top 10 sects in the North Sea, one could see the importance of the treasured alchemy furnace restriction. Lu Ping looked at the jade slips in his hand in surprise. His expression kept changing. In the end, he still kept the jade slips. Although the quality of the Na Chuan cauldron was far better than ordinary alchemy furnaces, it was still in the melting and breaking stage of the furnace and the treasured restriction. In a short period of time, it couldn't condense the second treasured restriction. However, the Xian Ling sect's boiling sea cauldron had been upgraded to a magic treasure for many years. It had already accumulated enough foundation. Perhaps it had the conditions to smelt the second treasured restriction. Thinking of this, Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Even though the Crystal Palace was rich and overbearing, there was no reason for a core forging realm cultivator to carry this jade slips, which clearly showed the symbol of the Crystal Palace, around him. Then, there was only one explanation. Peng Shiyuan was able to carry the treasured restriction on him because the Crystal Palace gave it to him. Thinking of the alliance between Ouyang Weijian and the overflowing sea sect outside Huanyu Island, Lu Ping was shocked. Could this treasured restriction be given to Xian Ling sect? Lu Ping immediately thought of the Xian Ling sect's boiling sea cauldron, which had been upgraded to a magic treasure for hundreds of years. It already had a deeper foundation. After the Battle of Tianling Mountain, because of Tiankang Laozu's appearance, the Crystal Palace had secretly formed an alliance with Xian Ling sect in the North Sea. This was already an open secret in the North Sea. Then, in order to support Xian Ling sect in fighting against the increasingly powerful Jinling, it was very easy for the Crystal Palace to use some means to strengthen Xian Ling sect's foundation. Could it be that the Liao clan was after this treasured restriction? Considering the Liao clan's alchemy skills were famous in the North Sea's cultivation world, it was understandable. However, from the few words Lu Ping heard during the ambush to kill Peng Shiyuan, it did not seem to be the case. Lu Ping thought for a while, then placed the second jade slip on his forehead and carefully read its contents with his divine sense. After a long time, Lu Ping opened his eyes, and a strange look flashed across them. This jade slip recorded an incomplete map. There was no specific location marked on the map, but it seemed to be in the fallen secret land. The only clue on the map was the dozens of islands in the center of the map, marked with labels such as Myriad Poison Island, 100 Miasma Reef, Black Fog Swamp, Eroding Bone Island, and so on. It looked like an archipelago area covered in poison. This map was of some use to alchemists. After all, the more dangerous and strange a place was, the more likely it was to grow some exotic flowers and plants. It was a necessary item to refine some top-grade medicinal pills. This was quite attractive to alchemists. Moreover, due to the accumulation of time in these places, there might be some heaven and earth strange objects such as the myriad poison meteorite energy shield, the 100-flower evil chi, and so on. Not to mention, Lu Ping had the myriad poison serum in hand, and his body had condensed the myriad poison meteorite energy shield, so he was not afraid of this kind of miasma. As soon as he thought of heaven and earth strange objects, Lu Ping's mind flashed, as if he had grasped something. After pondering for a moment, Lu Ping vaguely said to himself, archipelago covered in poison. Myriad poison serum. Myriad wonder jade dew, could it be that they came for the myriad wonder jade dew, or the spirit forging pill? Could it be that this map was what the Liao clan wanted? The Liao clan was the Pill Cauldron clan, and from the words leaked by Peng Xiuan and Liao Hu, it could be seen that the Liao clan was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. It seemed to be a branch of a clan in the Central Plains, and the Liao clan seemed to have a channel of communication between the North Sea and the Central Plains. For the Liao clan to move a branch from the Holy Land of the cultivation world to the barren North Sea, they must have some ulterior motive. Could it be for this map, the myriad wonder jade dew, or the pill recipe for the spirit forging pill? If it was just for these things, there was no need for the Liao clan to operate in the North Sea for over 1,000 years. What exactly was the Liao clan plotting? Thinking about how the Liao clan's patriarch, Liao Ruanjia, had deliberately taken the initiative to befriend Lu Ping at the North Sea Palace's alchemist assembly, Lu Ping shook his head and decided not to think about this problem for the time being. The Liao clan had been operating in the North Sea for over 1,000 years, how could their objective be so easily discovered? After some time, Yao Yong, who had recovered from his injuries, ran to the earth-fire vent of the Pill Pavilion to see Lu Ping. As soon as he saw Lu Ping, Yao Yong looked as if he had seen a ghost. He winked and pretended to be deep in thought as he asked in a low voice, I heard that you actually fought with martial uncle Xian Shu outside the vast universe island? When Lu Ping entered the earth-fire vent, Taoist master Xian Dian had asked him this question for no apparent reason. He didn't expect that after 2 or 3 years, Yao Yong would still ask him the same question. Lu Ping said in a bad mood, at that time, I had no other choice. If I didn't stop martial uncle, what would we do if junior martial brother Yin was captured? Do you really want to clean up the sect? Yao Yong hurriedly waved his hand and said, I'm not talking about that. Martial uncle Xian Shu is a 9th-layer core forging expert. Although he is only slightly weaker than the 3 truths 4 spirits in our sect, he is still the most promising cultivator in our sect to condense a 7th-layer golden core and achieve the avatar Laozu. Among the late-stage core forging cultivators, he is an existence whose name shakes the North Sea. How high is your cultivation? You actually fought with martial uncle Xian Shu and even knocked out Xian Ling sect Su Weihong who was watching from the side. Lu Ping furrowed his brows and said, did these things spread throughout the North Sea? There shouldn't be so many people who know that I fought with martial uncle Xian Shu. Chapter 489. Lu Ping frowned and said, has this matter spread throughout the North Sea? There shouldn't be so many people who know about my fight with martial uncle Xian Shu. Yao Yong nodded and said, martial uncle Xian Shu said it himself. Noticing Lu Ping's confusion, Yao Yong continued, junior martial uncle Xian Shu said that you've withstood his mystic heavenly lightning attracting art. This is the Yi Wood divine lightning technique, one of the most powerful techniques in our sect. It's also the most difficult technique to cultivate. My teacher said that if junior martial uncle Xian Shu used his full strength, he would have no choice but to dodge. There's no reason for him to take it head-on. Lu Ping said snappily, you also said that it was under martial uncle Xian Shu's full strength. Do you think martial uncle Xian Shu would use his mysterious heaven lightning drawing technique against me? Yao Yong shook his head in a daze and said, that's naturally impossible. However, it was still martial uncle Xian Shu who made a move. At their level of cultivation, even if they used the weakest great technique, it's not something we can receive. No, it's not something we can receive either. But you've already received it. Lu Ping was too lazy to explain. If he hadn't comprehended the Lotus Protective Dipper with his natal magic treasure at the last moment and blocked Spiritual Master Xian Shu's weakened, mysterious heaven lightning drawing technique, Spiritual Master Xian Shu probably wouldn't have changed his mind and directly captured Yin Xianchu and Ji Xianxian. Even if Spiritual Master Lu Xianyuan arrived, the three of them wouldn't be Spiritual Master Xian Shu's match. Moreover, with Spiritual Master Lu Xuanyuan's personality, he wouldn't make a move against Spiritual Master Xian Shu. What Lu Ping didn't understand now was why Spiritual Master Xian Shu would say this. It must be known that this was not a glorious thing for Spiritual Master Xian Shu. Moreover, to add such a great halo to Lu Ping's head, it might not be a good thing for Lu Ping. He's putting me on a fire to roast. Lu Ping didn't know why he thought of this sentence. Oh right, Uncle Master Xian Shu has gone into seclusion. I heard that it's time for him to condense the third type of heaven and earth spiritual item and complete the Golden Dan. Oh. Lu Ping asked in surprise, when did this happen? Yao Yong said with uncertainty, it should be not long after you were punished, right? It is said that Reverend Xian Shu even asked for punishment because he did not complete the task assigned by the sect to capture junior brother Yin. He recommended martial uncle Xian Chang to replace him as the person in charge of the sect's rules and discipline. Martial uncle Xian Chang. Then who is the cultivator guarding Dikuan Island now? Yao Yong chuckled and said, who else could it be? Dikuan Island is a medium-sized island at the forefront of our sect's fight against the demon race. Now that Martial Uncle Tian Lin is once again guarding Huangli Island to deter the demon race, compared to Huangli Island, the small spirit mine on Xianqi Island no longer has any meaning for my master to guard it. This time, he might as well just guard Dikuan Island. Right now, he's basically living in seclusion. He'll probably reach the Dharma stage within 10 years. Lu Ping smiled and said, then I have to congratulate him. I've received a lot of care from Martial Uncle Chu, so when the time comes, I might as well give him a generous gift. With the addition of Laozu, our sect's position in the North Sea's cultivation world is becoming more and more stable. Yao Yong nodded in agreement and said, you definitely have to give a generous gift. Although you're from the Chonghua Manor, you're different from your senior sisters. The sect also intends for you to form your own faction, so when the time comes, you'll naturally have to participate in the Dharma Manifestation Assembly in the name of your own abode. Lu Ping's expression didn't change, but his mind was racing. He maintained a smile on his face and asked, why do you say that? Yao Yong said mysteriously, I'm afraid that Martial Uncle Guo will advance to the Dharma Manifestation stage in the next 2 years. Martial Uncle Gua's level of cultivation is similar to my teacher's, but Martial Uncle Gua has accumulated more experience, so I'm afraid that he'll advance to the Dharma Manifestation stage first. In that case, he'll have to give up his position as the sect's administrator. As for the new administrator position, I don't know what the few Laozu are thinking, but they say that they want Martial Uncle Tian Ling to take over the position again. Lu Ping was stunned for a moment, as if he was thinking about the reliability of Yao Yong's information. Then, he shook his head and said, that's impossible. Our sect has never had a Dharma Laozu as the sect's administrator. Moreover, my teacher used to be the sect's administrator. How could he become Laozu now, and become an administrator again? Yao Yong laughed and said, when I heard this news, I also thought that it was impossible, but the person who said this is my teacher. Do you think I should believe it or not? Lu Ping was silent for a while and said, why is it my teacher? Why is it Dharma Laozu? Yao Yong scratched his head and said, how would I know? But when my teacher said it unintentionally, his face looked serious, but he also seemed to be looking forward to it. Lu Ping sneered and said, then what's the reason for wanting me to form my own sect? Yao Yong still shook his head and said, don't ask me. You also know that I've always been unwilling to think about these messy things. But my teacher said that the sect's administrators never pass on the inheritance between cultivators of the same sect. Lu Ping nodded thoughtfully, but he sneered at the first half of Yao Yong's words. Yao Yong's seemingly simple and honest appearance hid an extremely shrewd heart. Otherwise, Jinren Chu Xuancheng would never have let him say these words, and Shi Lingling would not have been seduced by this guy. Although he guessed that Jinren Chu Xuancheng deliberately said this to him through Yao Yong, and he also guessed some things in his heart, he still could not see the whole picture. After all, Lu Ping's current position was not high enough. Although he had been able to participate in some of the high-level affairs of the sect with his own efforts, the ones who could really decide the fate of the sect were the 8 Dharma phase Laozu and a few Zenrins who had achieved the 7th grade or above Dharma phase stage. Although Zhonghua and Xiaoyao belonged to 2 different sects, they were one family. There were more than 10 third-generation disciples under the 2 Laozu who had reached the core forging stage. The 10 disciples of Zhonghua, including Jiang Xianxian, had all advanced to the core forging stage, except for the eldest disciple and the 5th disciple who had died. Among them, there were 4 who had reached the middle stage of the core forging stage. Although the Xiaoyao lineage was not as prosperous as the Zhonghua lineage, the 6 core forging stage disciples made many second-generation disciples feel inferior. How many core forging stage cultivators were there in the whole of Jinling? The total number of third-generation disciples of the 2 sects accounted for almost 1/10 of all the core forging stage cultivators in Jinling. This was definitely a force that could affect or restrict the future of the sect. To add fuel to the fire, what kind of monster was the 9th disciple of the Zhonghua lineage? He was surrounded by the elite force of the third-generation disciples of Jinling. They had fought against the demon clan in the deep sea for more than 10 years and had accumulated a large amount of wealth for Jinling. With a cultivation of the middle stage of the core forging stage, he was able to kill a demon cultivator in the late stage of the core forging stage and fight against the most tyrannical second-generation disciples in the late stage of the core forging stage. This person had too many halos. The high-level cultivators of Jinling thought carefully. From the top to the Dharma phase Laozu, such as Tian Kong, Tian Ling, and Tian Lin, in the middle, Liang Xianfeng, Chu Xuancheng, Guo Xianshan, Xian Sen, and the deadly Xian Yin, not to mention the third-generation disciples. Almost all of the most elite people of Jinling had more or less received help or assistance from this disciple at a very important moment. They saw a kind of momentum in Lu Ping, a momentum that could sweep the whole sect when the conditions were ripe. With this kind of hidden momentum, how should Jinling deal with it? Lu Ping didn't know what kind of game and balance the sect had gone through, but he knew that under the rising momentum of Jinling, no one would do something that would hurt their own people and make their enemies happy. However, this didn't mean that no one would plot against them. Even when it came to dealing with Yin Xian, the sect had made 2 preparations. On the surface, they captured him to show the sects of the North Sea, and in the dark, they had Reverend Lu Xianyuan to inform them. Even at the last moment, Reverend Xian Shu didn't kill Lu Ping. Facing Reverend Xian Shu head-on, what an awe-inspiring strength. In fact, this was called praising to death. There were too many halos on Lu Ping, so many that some people had no choice but to take some measures, even if it was just in case. Reverend Xian Shu withdrew and went into closed-door training, leaving Lu Ping to face the consequences of the game between the sect's higher-ups. Tian Ling Laozu regained the position of Jinling's deacon, but it broke the whole sect's inheritance system. Deacons in the late stage of core forging were housekeepers, and the decision-making power of the sect was never in the hands of the deacons. However, Fa Xiang Laozu became a deacon, who would still dare to think that she was a housekeeper. This was a sect master who wasn't the sect master. He wanted Lu Ping to set up another faction outside of Chonghua Manor. He wanted to separate the most potential inheritors from Chonghua Manor and Xiaoyao Manor, weakening the combined strength of the 2 factions. At the very least, he wanted to weaken the strength of the 2 factions in the future. Perhaps, this was the compromise condition for Tian Ling Grand Ancestor to return to the sect. Nowadays, it was an indisputable fact that Chonghua Manor and Xiaoyao Manor were strong in Jinling. Whether or not Lu Ping established a separate faction would not have any impact on the rise of the 2 factions, because Lu Ping had always been Lu Tianling's disciple, and he was indebted to Tian Ling's Laozu. However, hundreds of years later, when Lu Ping's disciples began to walk on the stage of Jinling, it was hard to say what the disciples of Lu Ping's faction, or the disciples of Xiaoyao Manor, would think. In fact, the reason was very simple. Lu Ping respected Tianling Laozu very much, but he didn't have much friendship with the disciples of Xiaoyao Manor. Thinking of this, Lu Ping was horrified. Could it be that when teacher and grandmaster fell out and reopened Chonghua Manor, it was also the result of this? However, what did Master Chu Xuanqing mean when he said, the sect's deacons never pass on to the cultivators of the same faction? What was he hinting at? The position of Jinling's deacon was a position that was held by turns. It was to prevent one faction from becoming dominant. If Tianling Laozu became the deacon, then after Tianling Laozu retired, the disciples of Chonghua Manor and Xiaoyao Manor could not continue to take over this position. They could only wait for the next opportunity. But what if Lu Ping was not in Chonghua Manor? Lu Ping smiled. Although he didn't have the idea of getting involved in the deacon position, sometimes he really had no choice. When some people close to him needed his protection, what choice did he have? It was just that this kind of fate that was not in his control and arranged by others made Lu Ping very unhappy. Although the person who arranged this path for him might have good intentions, or maybe it was out of love, or maybe it was out of expectation, Lu Ping felt that at least he had to be willing. Chapter 490. Boy, you asked Xian Dian to call the old man here just to tell the old man that you killed the people from the Crystal Palace? Fornax Laozu looked at the Crystal Palace's high-grade alchemy furnace in Lu Ping's hand. His eyes couldn't help but emit a cold light, but Lu Ping could still clearly feel that Fornax Laozu didn't blame him much. On the contrary, he was more surprised by the high-grade alchemy furnace in Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Of course not, Martial Uncle, do you think the sect would dare to use this alchemy furnace? If not, this disciple will keep it for himself." Lu Ping pretended to take back the alchemy furnace in his hand. Fornax Laozu sighed and said, "Boy, speak, what do you want?" Lu Ping immediately asked in a serious tone, "Martial Uncle, how is Martial Uncle Xian Jing now?" Fornax Laozu glanced at him and said, "He is currently in seclusion. The sect has given him a task to refine 120 blood condensation pills and 600 blood refining pills. Although he has advanced to the late core forging stage, the sect Laozu still doesn't allow him to participate in the sect's decision-making." Lu Ping couldn't help but shiver. More than 700 furnaces of pills, even if they were only low-grade ones, Taoist Master Xian Jing would need 5 days to refine a furnace of pills. It would still take him 10 years to refine. Fortunately, Lu Ping's alchemy skills were now second only to Fornax Laozu in Jinling. Even if he wanted to refine these low-grade pills, the sect wouldn't let him waste his time on it. However, during the years of suppressing the earth fire, the sect wouldn't let him stay idle. Almost every half a month, the sect would assign a mid-stage or late-stage core forging pill refining task to him. This made Lu Ping a little confused as to why the Jinling sect had become so abundant. Of course, Lu Ping naturally wouldn't forget to take advantage of these tasks. For example, when refining mid-stage core forging pills, Lu Ping's success rate could reach 70% to 80%. Lu Ping would often deduct 1 pill from the batch. If he was lucky and refined 9 pills at once, Lu Ping wouldn't be polite and directly deduct 2 pills. Of course, the sect generally turned a blind eye to these things. Don't underestimate 1 or 2 pills. With Lu Ping's current status as an alchemy master, the pills he refined for cultivation had begun to become intermittent, let alone ordinary cultivators. Lu Ping initially thought the sect had discovered some ancient ruins in the past few years. But when he heard that enlightened Master Xian Jing, who was in closed-door meditation, was assigned such a low-grade alchemy mission, Lu Ping's intuition told him that things weren't as simple as they seemed. It sounded like they were preparing for something. Although Lu Ping had the qualifications to participate in the decision-making level of the sect, those who could really speak had to at least reach the height of Taoist Master Xian Shu and Taoist Master Xian Chang. Like Lu Ping, to put it bluntly, he was just an observer. He only had the right to know, but he had no right to make suggestions or choose. What's more, in the past few years, Lu Ping was punished to comb the fire vein at the earth fire vent. During this period, only Yao Yong occasionally came to see him. Hu Lili often came, but her status in the sect was far less than Yao Yong's. Daoist Master Xian Chen was also not as good as Daoist Master Chu Xuancheng. They didn't know much about the sect's secrets, so Lu Ping couldn't get much information from them. As for his other companions, they were dignified core forging cultivators, elites among the third-generation disciples. Now, they were hiding among the low-level cultivators. Some chopped firewood, some dug mines, and some swept courtyards. No one knew them, and no one was willing to pay attention to them, so how much could they know? On the other hand, there was no news of this group of genius cultivators from Jinling in the North Sea for several years. On the North Sea rookie list, Lu Ping's deed of killing Daoist Master Lu Hai with one sword strike was still standing high and no one dared to challenge him. The rankings of others like Ji Xianxian, Du Feng, and the others had all dropped below the top 50. On the other hand, after Yao Yong recovered from his injuries, he killed a middle-stage core forging demon cultivator during an underwater volcano eruption and obtained a low-grade earth step heaven spirit fire. After refining it, he advanced to the middle stage core forging in one fell swoop. He was extremely arrogant, and now he had rushed into the top 25 on the rookie list. Countless thoughts flashed through Lu Ping's mind in an instant. Seeing that Fornax Laozu was still looking at him, he smiled and said, "Martial Uncle, I wonder if I can learn the soul-stealing secret technique created by Martial Uncle Xian Jing?" Fornax Laozu looked at Lu Ping with a strange expression. Lu Ping, on the other hand, was embarrassed and giggled foolishly. Fornax Laozu directly threw him a jade slip, picked up the high-grade pill furnace on the ground and walked away. At the same time, he examined the pill furnace and said, "Yes, but the quality of the pill furnace in the Crystal Palace is indeed high. In the future, it is possible to upgrade it to a top-grade pill furnace. But for now, I still need to find Tianjiang to picture this pill furnace." When Lu Ping saw that Fornax Laozu was afraid that he would regret it, he almost snatched the pill furnace away. Lu Ping hurriedly shouted behind him, "Martial Uncle, this pill furnace can be counted as a meritorious deed for the sect, right? Can you reduce the remaining year of sorting out the vein of earth fire?" Fornax Laozu said without turning his head, "This is not up to me. Your teacher personally said that if you don't stay here for 5 years, don't even think about coming out." Lu Ping was dumbfounded. After a long time, he said unconvinced, "Isn't this punishment set by Martial Uncle Tian Kong? How can it be teacher personally said so?" Even so, Lu Ping didn't dare to have any other ideas. He honestly prepared to stay in the mouth of the earth fire for 5 years. Lu Ping held a black jade slip in his hand. After carefully examining the contents, Lu Ping revealed a strange expression. After pondering for a moment, Lu Ping took out a jade bottle and poured out an ordinary medicinal pellet. Then, he pointed at the mid-grade cauldron in front of him that he hadn't used for a long time. The cauldron was hovering above the earth fire vent, constantly spinning in the air. As Lu Ping pointed at it, a puff of white mist suddenly burst out from the cauldron. Then, 10 white, jade-like medicinal pellets flew out from the mist. Lu Ping casually put away the mid-grade cauldron and stored the medicinal pellets in a jade bottle, leaving only one in his hand. Then, he cast a few hand seals and struck the ordinary medicinal pellet he took out earlier. After that, a grayish gaseous substance floated up from the medicinal pellet. Lu Ping quickly made a few more hand signs. At the same time, he used his divine sense and true yuan to restrain the grayish gas. But as soon as the gas floated out of the pill, a lot of it disappeared. Although Lu Ping was fast enough, he still only pulled half of the gas. Then, Lu Ping carefully wrapped the remaining half of the gas around the white jade pill that he had just refined in his hand. Lu Ping was overjoyed. He cast a few more hand seals and this time, they were aimed at the white jade pills. However, a small whirlpool suddenly appeared in the middle of the gray fog. All the gray fog continued to shrink and then gathered in the middle of the whirlpool. When the gray fog completely disappeared, the white jade pill that was previously wrapped in the gray fog was revealed. But this time, the white jade pill had turned into a gray pill. It was very similar to the pill that was poured out of the white jade bottle, but the color was a lot darker. What Lu Ping used was the soul-stealing secret technique created by Taoist master Xian Jing. Speaking of which, Taoist master Xian Jing was also a famous alchemy genius in Jinling. Otherwise, he would not have become one of the few alchemy masters in Jinling. However, Taoist master Xian Jing's alchemy was a bit special. The height of his alchemy was greatly affected by his own cultivation. In other words, when Taoist master Xian Jing's cultivation reached the middle stage of the core forging realm, his alchemy could at most refine pills in the middle stage of the core forging realm. This was very similar to Yu Jiangrui, the alchemy master that Lu Ping captured in the East China Sea. Because his cultivation could not be improved, Taoist master Xian Jing's alchemy was also lingering at the level of refining pills in the middle stage of the core forging realm. In the end, he had no choice but to turn his attention to the only remaining spirit forging pill that Lu Tianling Laozu gave to the pill pavilion for research. This allowed him to create a secret technique that extracted part of the essence of the spirit forging pill without anyone noticing and helped him advance to the late stage of the core forging realm. If it wasn't for the incident with Taoist master Liang Xianfeng, which was too coincidental, Taoist master Xian Jing would have been able to avoid this matter. However, there was a flaw in this soul-stealing secret technique. It was unable to completely draw out the essence from the pill and pour it back into the spirit acceptance pill that was specially refined for this secret technique. There was always a part of the essence in the pill that would evaporate and disappear during the drawing process. Lu Ping used ordinary pills to perform the soul-stealing secret technique several times in a row. With Lu Ping's spiritual sense that was far superior to others, he only managed to reduce the loss of using the secret technique to about 30%. Just as Lu Ping was preparing to stay in this earth fire vent for another year, a ripple suddenly formed in the void in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and looked at the ripple quietly without saying anything. At this moment, the ripple suddenly split open into a pitch-black hole, and a jade slip appeared without warning at the crack. Lu Ping reached out and calmly took the jade slip in his hand. Then the black hole closed again and turned into a ripple. The ripple gradually stretched and the void returned to its original state. Lu Ping scanned the jade slip with his spiritual sense, and his face suddenly lit up. He got up and walked out of the earth fire vent. When Lu Ping got up, the earth fire that had been suppressed by him for 4 years suddenly lost its restriction. A pillar of fire as thick as a bucket suddenly poured into the fire-splitting plate and surged toward each alchemy room. As soon as Lu Ping came out of the earth fire vent, he heard a burst of crackling sounds in the 36 alchemy rooms. At least 13 alchemy rooms had exploded. Lu Ping smirked and said, "This method of controlling fire is still too weak. It doesn't even have this kind of emergency measure." A series of curses and roars came out, followed by someone pushing the door of the alchemy room aggressively. It seemed that he wanted to find the culprit who made the earth fire suddenly go berserk. For 4 years, since that person suppressed the earth fire, the output of the earth fire in the pill pavilion had been stable for 4 years. Why did the earth fire suddenly go berserk today? However, when the Fusion Ling sect alchemists walked out of the alchemy room while cursing and swearing, they immediately shut their mouths in embarrassment when they saw the man who was stretching his back in front of the earth fire. They stood there, not knowing whether to advance or retreat. Who is it, bastard? How can the earth fire go berserk? My spirit cleansing pill, I spent 4 years to collect all the spirit grass, and now it's wasted again. Just as everyone looked at each other, the stone door of a second-level alchemy room suddenly opened and a cultivator roared and rushed in. The other alchemists quickly dodged. Lu Ping looked at the cultivator rushing over and was furious at first, but then he saw Lu Ping's face was full of excitement. He smiled and said, "Xian Yan martial uncle, I haven't seen you for 4 years, how are you?